The following is a conversation with Amy Wang. Expect to learn how Amy achieved a 4.0 GPA at Caltech, one of the most difficult universities on the entire planet, and a chemical engineering degree, one of the most difficult majors out there, while also sleeping 7 to 8 hours a night, maintaining great physical condition and staying healthy, keeping up her social life, and also battling migraines at the same time. And the exact strategies she used to grow a massive YouTube channel of over 600,000 subscribers after graduating school. Amy is truly one of a kind, and you're going to take away tons of actionable and useful advice from this episode. This is Liftoff. Welcome aboard.
3, 2, 1, liftoff.
Amy, thanks for coming today.
Thank you for having me. I'm so excited.
So you consistently maintained a 4.0 GPA at Caltech, which is, objectively speaking, one of the hardest universities in the world. And you also did a chemical engineering degree, one of the hardest majors at Caltech. So tell me, what are your top study principles that helped you actually pull off that 4.0?
Yeah, thank you. It was a lot harder to survive than thrive, to say the least. So I'd say that my top 3 principles kind of center around how I go about life as well. So the first one would be to really be your own coach and to be your own biggest cheerleader. So that kind of principle is like where right now, especially with social media, I feel like a lot of people, they rely on hearing a quote unquote expert online, and they will search them as the first and foremost resource before looking within and problem solving. And so with Be Your Own Coach, we need to realize that we are actually the expert of our own lives. We know it better than anyone else. And so we should actually try to give ourselves advice first and iterate upon that before looking to someone else. And that'll actually save us a lot of time in the long run. And secondly, will improve our problem solving skills and human capital as a whole.
That's an excellent point.
Oh, okay.
Right, being your own coach versus cheerleader.
Yeah.
I think nowadays, there's this perception that there's one rule or one general philosophy that applies to everyone. And if we kind of abstract away from studying and talk about just the world of health, right?
Yeah.
In this case, the CDC is like, everybody needs 8 hours of sleep. Is that really true though? Is every single person need that exact amount? Maybe you're good with 7, maybe some people need 9 or 10, right? But you don't know that unless you actually explore that for yourself. I think this probably relates to diet as well. Some people do well with certain diets, some people don't do so well. Some people have like immune conditions, autoimmune disorders. Some people have like, I don't know, just random things or like genetics impacts in that regard. So I think there's like kind of a bit of an obsession with, oh, I'm going to find the one thing that I should do, and everybody should be doing that. When in actuality, if you were kind of like you said, a coach of yourself, where it's like, oh, I'm going to actually explore. Like maybe I'll try a vegan diet and see how I feel on that, or maybe I'll try like a carnivore diet and see how that affects me. I feel like is an important thing to just kind of developing anything in general.
Yeah, I totally agree with the health aspect for sure. And that's the other thing too. Is like when you're your own coach, you're giving yourself compassion, which relates to the cheerleader thing, right? Because as a coach, you customize your advice based off of that person, right? A coach treats every single player differently. And so then relating to be your own biggest cheerleader, a lot of people's problems, I think that gets them in a rut and they can't get out, as you see with all those popular videos out online, like, oh, how to get out of a rut? How do I stop procrastinating? And a lot of times when people comment those questions like, please help me, I just can't get myself to stop procrastinating, or they're like, I feel hopeless. I think it's because they're being a perfectionist and too hard on themselves and believing that procrastination means there's something wrong with them. But in reality, if you give yourself compassion, just like you would a friend and like you would cheer on your best sports team, then you would realize that mistakes happen to everyone. Procrastination is literally something everyone struggles with. And so when you use that approach, you will cheer yourself on and be like, hey, I know this might be hard right now, but you're going to be so much happier after you get out of it. And then that also goes for your wins too. When you cheer yourself on and you give yourself the time to celebrate your wins, you're more likely to have more of them. And then your wins will actually empower you to win bigger and greater things and overcome bigger mountains you climb.
Yeah, I totally agree. I think I don't want to proclaim myself as like a high achiever,
No,
but I feel like in that kind of culture where nothing is ever good enough. It's like, oh, you make some success, you achieve something, and it's like, okay, what's the next thing now? I think there's a sense, and I can even speak for myself, of like beating yourself up and like not actually cheering yourself on. It's like, for example, let's say you fail an exam, right? I think a lot of people who strive to do well, immediately your brain turns on and it's like, oh, like how could you do that? You did so bad. you should have done better. Why can't you be like everyone else? Everyone else is doing better. Your friends are doing better. Why can't you do that too? And if you actually think about it, that is not how you would talk to a friend, right? Let's say your best friend gets like a B or a C on an exam and they're upset. You wouldn't say, oh, you should have been better. What the hell's wrong with you? Right? You would never, ever say that. But so many of us say that to ourselves, right? Instead, if a friend did badly, or like, let's say you're a coach and you're coaching someone and they did badly, they like lost a game or they did it bad in a test, you would say, hey, let's acknowledge this is like a setback, totally fine. Let's actually analyze how we're going to go forward from here and think about what we can do. So honestly, just treating yourself like you are a coach of your own mind. It's like been revolutionary. I'm still working on it, to be honest. I think like there was a temptation to beat yourself up, being like, what the hell? What's wrong with me? Why would I do that? But I have found that acknowledging that every single person makes mistakes out there. Look at like any celebrity, right? No celebrities are living, like people who have achieved things at the highest level are completely perfect. There is no one perfect out there. And the way you know that is like a lot of people look up to certain people. I don't know, like Steve Jobs, Elon Musk, Bill Gates, these like crazy entrepreneurs and celebrities. And they're like, oh, like I wish I could be more hardworking and disciplined like that. But if I were to ask you, would you trade lives with them in all of its entirety? Most people would say no, actually. Like I would not want to be Steve Jobs and die of pancreatic cancer at a young age. I would not want to be Elon Musk, who has 18 different children with like 5 different people and also like half the world hates at the same time. And he even admitted like, you would not want to be me. Right. So I think just having self-compassion for yourself really does matter a lot.
Precisely. I think learning of other successful people's stories is super helpful for 2 reasons that you kind of alluded to. So number 1 is that you realize they have their own struggles and you actually feel better about yourself. Like, unfortunately, sometimes humans, they like when other people have struggled. But at least it gives you hope that like your problems right now are not the end all be all. And then secondly, when you look at other people's true reality of their lives, it's like that quote actually from Alex Hormozy. It was something like, oh, people will always be jealous of the success someone has, but no one's going to be jealous of the work it took to get there.
Definitely. I think it's like the myth of the overnight success. Everybody just looks at the end result. Everybody looks at, oh, the one day this person sells their company for $100 million, or the one day that this happens or that happens. But no one actually sees the years and years and toil and trouble, and when everybody's doubting them. It's like you're a failure up until you succeed and everybody wants to be like you, right? So definitely I totally agree with that. Tell me about your principle of yin and yang and mindset.
For sure. So kind of relating to, again, like getting our information online and the struggle that a lot of students have, hence why they like my content. So the problem with the content is that the self-improvement advice talks a lot about the actions you want to do, like wake up at 6 a.m., go to the gym, eat healthy. These are all actions. But the struggle that many students and ambitious young adults or any adults struggle with is to do the action in the first place. And so I see comments also like, oh yeah, I know all these advice, but I just can't get myself out of bed. Or like, this is the 5th self-improvement video I've watched and I'm just addicted. I can't do anything. So the solution I found is that we need to consider what mindset we have to lead us automatically into the right actions. So that's how I kind of came up with this term, yin yang, made it up myself, where yin and yang are like mindset and action, where a positive effect in one will propagate the other, and then it'll go in a circle. So if you have a great mindset that you believe in your potential and that you're excited about this activity or something like that, you're going to be propelled to take the right action or the beneficial action. Then when you did something good for yourself, you're going to feel, oh, this is even better. Plus, I got a positive effect. So that's going to create a positive feedback loop, make your mindset even better, and then make your action better. So it's important to understand this concept because we can also spiral the opposite way, where you're feeling bad about yourself. You're not your biggest cheerleader. You're not your own coach. And so you'll beat yourself up. Well, when you beat yourself up, what do you want to do? You want to stay in bed all day. You want to scroll on short form content. And that action will make you feel even worse and even worse and worse. And so that's why people will struggle to do the right thing and then to basically get back on the right track. So I found that by using this kind of concept, my videos themselves are a form of productivity, that when people are watching them, they're actually doing something productive instead of wasting their time because they're kind of rewiring their mindset. And I get comments like, wow, I listened to your 30-minute podcast and I'm studying for 5 hours straight now. And the most I've studied for is 2 hours. And I'm just like, that's crazy. So
That is insane.
Yeah.
Wow. I've actually never heard that explained so well before, to be honest, because I think there is a perception in the self-development, productivity, self-improvement space online that I think both of us either exist in or are adjacent to, that why watch these videos? This person's you watch all these self-improvement videos, all these self-development videos. Why can't you just do the work? Just do the work. Just study, just study 5 hours a day. Like, you don't have to watch this mindset or discipline or willpower or stoicism video again and again and again. But that's an excellent point you brought up, because those videos kind of retrain your brain to make good decisions. And actually, you will organically come up with the 5 hours of studying. So, for example, here, it's like, you could tell that person who's in the comments, oh, you should study 5 hours a day. I'm sure that person has heard it from their friends, their family, their parents, their teachers, but it was your video that kind of like retrained their brain, shifted their perspective, and made them realize organically that they need to do that to further their own goals, which created that like intrinsic motivation rather than kind of like bending to the will of someone else's pressure to do that. And honestly, it's like, when you want to do anything consistently, right? Whether it's go to the gym, get A's the cool way, as you like to say, or pick up a new hobby, right? This is kind of an adjacent here. There's a reason why people who do musical instruments as kids, especially in like the Asian community, right? So many kids were like competitive piano players or competitive violin players. But when you follow up with them, maybe a decade or two later, and they're in their 20s or 30s or even 40s, it's actually very rare to see someone who continues to play a violin, continues to play piano, continues to play those instruments. And you start to realize, hey, the only reason they did at the time was, one, because of the competitive landscape and environment. They would feel like it's social status. Their friends would think they were cool. Their parents would like give them cookies and stuff if they did well at their piano competitions. And also is due to the external pressure. And maybe they didn't intrinsically enjoy the instrument itself. Otherwise, they would have continued doing it for decades and decades and decades. But most of the time, it's not the case, right? So the only way to really do things in the long term is to intrinsically understand why it's important to you and why you should do it for the long term, right? For example, like when I was in gym class in high school, I hated gym class. Like I would walk around the track, I would never play the games, right? It was just like a nightmare, right? I hated gym, and I never worked out on my own. Like maybe I would run one day because my mom made me, and then I would just go back and just, I don't know, watch YouTube and stuff. I would never exercise. But after I graduated, I intrinsically started to get interested in it. I started watching YouTube videos about Jeff Nippard and Athlete X and all these lifting YouTubers, right? And I intrinsically found the value of getting in shape and being physically fit. And now it's like, there's not a week goes by where I don't exercise at least a couple times, right? And that was never my life for 18 years straight, even though other people told me I should do that. So I totally resonate with the idea of working on one step earlier. Instead of thinking, oh, I should sleep 9 hours a night and I should study 5 hours a day, think about, what are my goals? What do I want to achieve in life? Why do I want to achieve that? What is necessary to actually make that happen? How do I feel when I sleep 6 hours a night? How do I feel when I study 1 hour a day and scroll for 4 hours instead of studying the rest of the time? And then working backwards towards designing a protocol that works for you directly.
Yeah, for sure. It would be exhausting if everything we did that was good for ourselves was forced just because we thought we should do it. But we have to want to do it. And that's the key. Just like the kids studying 5 hours. They didn't feel like 5 hours is good for me for school. They probably just felt so pumped up that it was the right thing to do in that moment. And so they did it.
Definitely. I feel like a lot of people exist like that, which is like they do things that are productive or good, but only because they feel like they have to.
Mm-hmm.
Instead of kind of intrinsically doing it. And then I think that probably contributes to that feeling of burnout, of overwhelm. And then it's like a self-reinforcing cycle, like you said, which like you medicate yourself through content, right? If you can just scroll TikTok, Instagram in bed, then you can like take your mind away from doing things you don't want to do, right? So yeah, totally agree with you there. Tell me about getting A's the cool way.
Sure. Getting A's the cool way is where you don't think that grades are the most important thing in life. And you understand that A's do not guarantee your success. It's very ironic because you think about the straight A student wanting to get A's as someone who just cares about school and books. But I don't think that's the best way to do it. That's why I say the cool way, because it's far away from that stereotype that we think of. So this comes, I think, with two sides of the same coin, where one, you get A's by building your human capital. And then two, it's by prioritizing efficiency. So on the human capital part, it's kind of related to, honestly, principle one, where if you are problem solving and you approach the situation like, I'm going to get straight A's no matter what, and I have these constraints, I have this teacher, I have these circumstances, how am I going to do it? And you time manage, you organize yourself. These are all skills that will make you super successful after you graduate from college and enter the real world. Your resilience, your character, and your soft skills and ability to talk to upperclassmen and get the right resources. This is what's going to build your overall human capital when you enter the workforce or even become an entrepreneur. I think it's very much part of an entrepreneur mindset, which I read about recently. So the second part about efficiency. So it's not cool to be a straight A student and grind yourself into the ground. Studying 14 hours a day, like those YouTube videos so graciously promote to us, is not cool because I can't even do that. I don't know how people do that. So I think that when you prioritize efficiency, you're considering that your health is a default that you should prioritize such that you can perform at your best. And when you perform at your best and you feel good about yourself, your body, then you're naturally going to work better and happier. And you're just going to exponentially improve, you know?
Definitely. Listen up. If you're struggling to land an amazing software engineering internship or full-time job, and if you've submitted dozens of applications and you feel like nothing is working, or you just feel like you don't understand the process, I actually run a school for people who want to land great software engineering jobs called the Software Engineering Accelerator. And over the past year, we've helped dozens of students land incredible jobs and internships at companies like Capital One, Amazon, Google, LinkedIn, Adobe, MongoDB, and the list goes on. And the best part about our program is that we actually guarantee the outcome. So if you don't get the internship or full-time job you want, you don't pay. So if you're interested in working directly with me to land an incredible job in tech, absolutely guaranteed, check out the link in the description and submit an application to join us. I feel like a lot of people have the perception that nothing in life matters except for your grades. And you're telling this as someone who literally got a 4.0. Have you ever gotten less than an A in your entire life in anything, out of curiosity?
Well, on tests I have, but
okay,
overall.
But in grades. So like, this is like a perfect example here. Middle school, high school, college. I mean, you're doing your MBA in the fall, so
yes.
I hope you keep the streak up because that would be a really epic arc. But it's like, I think a lot of people, so first of all, they don't recognize what is the point of getting A's, right? I think A's are important. I'm sure you think A's are important too in general, but we have to actually double click on this and think like, what is the point of that, right? Because getting A's, you know, okay, let's say I take a step back here. To get 95%, let's say you have to put in 8 hours a day. To get 99.9%, you have to put in 16 hours a day, right? There are diminishing returns in any one area in life. So very often you can still do well. You can still do excellent, in fact, to get like, I don't know, like let's say you got a 3.93 GPA. But you're also in great physical condition, you have great friendships, and your relationship with your family is great, and you sleep 8 hours a day. From my perspective, right, it's like, I would rather take a slightly lower GPA and also try to maintain all those other things, rather than, like you said, studying 16 hours a day just to eke out 0.001% improvement in this one area. So I think there is a little bit of obsession about the student who studies 16 hours a day. There's those like study with me videos. Maybe not study with me videos. There's those like how I study 12 hours in one day, and the thumbnail's no breaks. And it's like some guy at a computer with some Google Calendar on the screen, and the Google Calendar is super filled out with all these colors and stuff like that, right? And there's just an obsession with performing at the quote unquote highest level. But in fact, that's also a little bit unrealistic in terms of the actual person themselves. Because spoiler alert, as two YouTubers sitting here, it's very easy to like fake 14, 15, 16 hours a day studying, right? And in fact, those people are probably not even remotely efficient the entire time. They're probably studying 3, 4, 5. Be generous. They're studying 8 hours of focused time during that day. Well, it's also 8 hours of wasted time. Shouldn't it be better to spend 3 of those other 8 hours sleeping more? Wouldn't it be better to spend 1 hour hanging out with friends and family, an hour or two relaxing, reading, doing a hobby, and then like an hour exercising? I don't know. Seems a better deal to me.
Yeah, I just think that we need to redefine what we aspire to and what is quote unquote cool. So when we think about what a good life is, it's not about grinding yourself in the ground. And for me, if I wanted to have good teenage years, I want to spend time with friends. And I know that grades can cause some kind of success down the line, but what about the friends I make? What about the connections I make with teachers and things like that? So the issue right now with self-improvement is that they tell you you should aspire to a certain level. like be productive and to do things that you're not currently doing as a default. And why? Because it creates a need. People then feel like, oh, I need to watch this video. Where if you were just trying to be healthy and spend your time on things that are good for you, like not on social media, you're automatically going to participate in self-growth. But self-improvement has become such a branded element that also can sell things, as we might see online, that's why it's become this huge, almost like made up concept. And that's also why talk about efficiency is greater than productivity. Efficiency is better than productivity because efficiency, the definition itself, it directly looks at the amount of input versus output. And being a lazy person, actually, and still getting A's, I feel like people might fight me on that, saying I'm lazy, but I want to get the result I want with the least amount of work possible and to get the highest ROI possible. So I don't want to do the tedious work. I'm going to figure out a way to do the tedious work with as little effort as possible.
Oh, definitely. I think there is still an obsession nowadays of the person who grinds himself into the ground. The person who's spending all day studying, all week studying. I have some friends who are in med school currently, and that definitely seems like the vibe, which is like working all day long, just grinding. But if you actually look at their daily routine, their daily life, okay, how much of that time is actually well spent intentionally? Kind of like on a side here, a lot of people I talk to who are kind of in this mindset, they tell me, Aman, I don't have time to exercise. I'm so busy. I have work. I have school. Exercise is something I do during breaks or after I'm done. At some future point, right? Not right now. But then I'm like, okay, show me your screen time, and it's 6 hours. I'm like, what the hell, right? So it's like it's just a clear. If you open your phone right now and your screen time is like 3 hours, okay, then you definitely do have time to exercise for like a 20-minute workout routine. And also, you can watch YouTube and Netflix on your phone while working out too. So it's like you can do both. So I think people need to stop coping and thinking that, oh, like I have to do this, therefore I can't do these other things I want to do. I can't hang out with my friends. I can't go to the gym. I can't eat healthy. Even though I want to, I can't though because I'm too busy. I think it's a lie that people tell themselves.
Yeah, it's so crazy how in this conversation, I know we're going to point out social media and phones multiple times, and the listener knows this. The listener will likely know that phones are a problem because the average person on the internet knows that. They know their attention span has worsened. They know that they're less able to be present with their loved ones and to spend time on the things that should matter to them, that they know matter to them. But yeah, we keep talking about it just simply because it's still important to hear that, I think, and to realize that, hey, we need to be our own coach and be conscientious as a first step to realize that you cannot complain about all the things in your life until you have worked on the things within your control. Until you've already taken care of all the things in your control, then you can't complain. Because clearly that person, as you said, has not taken control of the things they can't control, which is their screen time.
Oh, definitely. I think, as Feynman likes to say, you are the greatest fool and the easiest person to fool is yourself, right? People tell themselves lies all the time, right? It's like, I think something people like to escape is cognitive dissonance because it is uncomfortable to know that I have time to exercise, I want to exercise, and yet I'm still not doing it. That is a really sad existence to live in because you're like torn almost. It's like, I know I want to do this thing, and why am I not doing it? So I have found that people will come up with justifications for themselves, which is like, even though they want to exercise, they'll be like, not right now. Or even like, let's just take exercise out of the picture, right? Let's say like socialization, okay? Let's say some people enjoy hanging out with their friends. They're like, hey, I have a great time when me and my two best friends go for a walk in the park and grab coffee together and catch up. A lot of the times, let's say they're struggling with social anxiety. They're like, they don't do that because they're nervous about, like meeting new people or talking to one of their friends after a long time. They just feel nervous about that, right? So they'll often justify to themselves, oh, I can't do this because I'm too busy. Sorry, I can't come because I have this exam. I'm too busy. I can't hang out. So sorry. Because it's like they don't want to live with that existence of knowing that they want to do this, that they can't. So I have noticed I feel like one of the biggest level ups I've had over the past few years is like isolating cognitive dissonance and almost training my brain to be like, I have to pick one or the other, right? Like I have to either come to terms with me never doing something or just put aside those insecurities and fears and actually just go through it, even though I don't want to. So I really like the idea that you mentioned here. Like everybody watching this knows that this thing is not really good for them. But I think change change only happens when someone has a great deal of pain that motivates it. So I feel like it is important to listen to it over and over and over and over again, to like open your screen time on your phone right now and be like, why is it 8 hours?
Yeah.
So
I feel like it's so unfortunate that basically I don't think people will realize that it's so bad until it's too late. A lot of people, because I see comments like, oh, I'm a 40-year-old man. I've wasted half my life on social media. Like,
holy shit.
Yeah. Or like the internet and things like that. Like, please, like this ruined my relationships, my career, everything. And there are lots of people who like that comment too. And so at least I hope those people who read that comment have not learned it the hard way then. But maybe I just don't have enough faith because these apps are just so addicting. But I think we need to give ourselves the power back, you know, just like you were saying about the cognitive dissonance. That's a great example because I want to acknowledge that I also will have cognitive dissonance with doing things. Like I am actually nervous before filming every video still. It's super uncomfortable and I could just say I'm not going to do it because I'm uncomfortable. But if I were to look at my life as a whole and logically what I would like to have done and accomplished and what I know I would regret, then I am going to get myself to do the thing over and over again until it becomes a little less uncomfortable.
Oh, absolutely. Like I recently picked up running again, something I've tried and failed many times at, and now I'm like on another arc, you know what I mean? And the second time I was like doing it like this week or something a few days ago, I was like, I don't want to do this. I was, God, I don't want to run. I just want to watch YouTube, lay in my bed and eat Chipotle or something like that, right? I didn't want to actually do it. But then immediately my brain was like, I'm on. This is cognitive dissonance. Your brain is telling yourself this. You decided you wanted to get back into running. You know it's going to be good for you. You know, your like cardiovascular health, your VO2 max is going to get better. You're also going to feel better. It's also social activity. Every reason to do this thing immediately came up. You are choosing this. No one is making me do this except for me. And then I was like, oh, I'm going to do it. Right. So honestly, that level of almost brainwashing of just like coming up with the reasons why you want to do it. Why this thing is good for you? Because I think, especially as adults, right? No one, and we're both adults who work for ourselves. No one is making me do anything but myself. So I am making myself a fool if I'm acting like, oh, like I'm like rebelling against my own like better nature, right? No, like I'm choosing this. I am choosing to do this. I'm choosing to film this video. I'm choosing to do this podcast. I'm choosing to work out. I'm choosing to travel. Even if a lot of that is uncomfortable because it serves something I want. And I know that at the end of it, I'm going to feel good and I'm happy I'm living up to my purpose.
Yeah, we have to use logic to combat the feelings in the moment, because how I think about it is like, you know, atomic habits, each habit matters, right? Like it accumulates into this compounding effect. So how we need to think is that we would need to put a lot more value and weight behind the one-time instance, where that one time you go to the gym will have no visible results, but you have to completely 110% believe that that did something, and that maybe you can miss one day, but it cannot be 2 days in a row. Because for me, like I put so much knowledge into the fact that the compounding effects are real, that now I know, okay, if I have a homework assignment or like I have some kind of pursuit, I need to start as soon as possible, just because I purely trust the process. And like, it's so crazy where like, if we hear the same advice over and over again, a lot of people might not convert it. They just simply hear it 1 year and out the other. But I think the real power in successful people is how they can convert the advice from people who are obviously like more wise or more experienced, that like, why wouldn't I listen to that person? And so that's just me. Like, even when my mom before, like, so as a kid, you don't like eating vegetables, right? That typical kid behavior. But my mom would make bitter melon, which is literally super bitter. And as a kid, I would eat it simply because she told me this has a lot of nutritional benefits. So I think that kind of explains something that transferred into getting older as well. And I don't want to say this is genetic, because maybe then people will like give up and feel like, oh, as a kid, I didn't like vegetables. But maybe it's just that pain and discomfort breeds strength. So this is kind of going off, but I think the story kind of explains why. So I used to have really severe eczema as a baby. And so I would have to take really, really disgusting Chinese medicine as a baby. And eventually I would just learn to swallow it down, because the alternative was worsening rashes and like scratches like all over my body that was really itchy, right? And so I learned to take a certain kind of pain temporarily to escape a different kind of pain. And so that's something we should realize now, that like life is going to be hard regardless, but it's which pain would you rather have? And so you being off your phone, it might be hard in the moment, but what's the alternative? You've wasted years of your life.
Definitely. I feel like Chris Williamson likes to say, what's worse, the pain of discipline or the pain of regret? I'll pick the pain of discipline every single time. I love the idea you mentioned earlier about the studying thing, about starting things as soon as you get it, as early as possible. Because as someone who is a chronic procrastinator and struggled with grades in high school and college, I feel like so many people, let's say you get a project or an assignment and it's due 3 weeks from now. In terms of short-term thinking, it feels like there's no reason to start this now, right? It's like, I have 3 weeks to do it. I have 3 weekends to do it. I want to go out to a restaurant and watch TV tonight. Why would I start this thing early? I have 3 weeks to do it. And then your brain bubbles up that reasoning like day after day after day after day after day until it's two weeks and 6 days. And now it's due tomorrow. And now you have to rush and do it. And now you're feeling stressed out and you get a bad grade at the end of the day, right? I love the idea of, like you said, you almost brainwash yourself into thinking like, no, I'm starting it now. No matter what it is, it's like, I don't care if it's 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, 6 months. I'm doing it this week. And then, I mean, the results clearly speak for themselves in terms of that outcome. But honestly, I really resonate with the idea of just like brainwashing yourself into these like general principles, almost from other people too. Like, I've benefited immensely by watching like the same creators and reading the same books over and over and over and over again. And everybody's like, oh, it's the same advice, same video over and over and over and over again. Yeah, because you need that advice. That's what you need. And you need to almost brainwash yourself into hearing that person's voice. Right. So yeah, I benefited immensely from doing something like that.
Yeah, for sure. I like how you said brainwash. It has such a negative connotation. So what's interesting is I think that's the equivalent when I say like rewiring your mindset. But yeah, it's exactly the same thing.
100%.
Yeah.
So let's actually talk about social media addiction. I know I've seen multiple of your videos where you talk about this. I feel like one big pillar of your like ideology and content online is really reeling back social media addiction, the dangers of social media addiction in the younger generation today. And there's like a book, I'm sure you've seen like The Anxious Generation by Jonathan Haidt, about how like, especially in like young girls, Instagram has almost destroyed them. Anxiety, depression. It's like a sharp uptick as soon as Instagram came out. So I wanted to ask here, people are spending 7, 8, 9 hours a day on their phones. So I want to hear, what practical tips do you have to actually reduce that screen time down and combat that social media addiction?
Yeah, for sure. Hearing that statistic is honestly so saddening. I can't believe that's real. So I guess some background for myself. I downloaded Instagram when I was in middle school. I was convinced by my friends to do it, and we made our first post. And then eventually it got quickly into like, oh, checking my likes, or like overthinking every post, or like, oh, does that person follow me back? Things like that. So I think it really creates problems that literally otherwise would not have existed, first and foremost. And that's very harmful, of course, for teenagers. And what's funny is like, I also get a lot of comments saying like, oh, I'm 11 or I'm 13 and I'm already addicted to my phone, but I know this is bad. So I do want to acknowledge first and foremost that these apps are designed a certain way to be addicting. So, you know, it's like, which side has more responsibility, like the app or yourself? It's like, I don't want to put all the blame on the person. But to really reduce your screen time, I think for me, why I was able to literally not scroll short form at all, it's because of my upbringing and also like the mindset that my parents ingrained in me, which I believe can be trained. It's not just something that you're like born with, or like you have to have years and years of like parenting to do that. And it's the belief that all I want to do is something good for me. That like, if I am the most important person in the world, you know, I love myself, right? Self-love is a big thing nowadays. It's trending. But I think the pinnacle of self-love is putting yourself first and not looking at strangers online. Because if you put yourself first and you treat yourself like, you know, maybe your future child who you would want to flourish in their life, then you want to give them the best shot and the fighting chance at reaching their potential, having the best life possible. So think that way to yourself. Like every time you open up your phone, you feel worse, and you know, like your values are being warped. Your perception of reality is warped. You feel less productive and everything. And so you have to really be mindful and almost journal about it. I think journaling about it will be really helpful too, because people just simply need to reflect and let their brain work instead of mindlessly scroll and let other people tell them what to think. You need to think yourself, because people need to believe how smart they are and how brilliant their brains are themselves. And when you believe that, at the same time, it's going to make you want to use your brain more. So it's just a compounding effect like that. And as a first step, I guess, more actionable rather than like the mindset thing, I think is to really find activities that give you true joy. And so when you fill up your time with those activities, like I did, like playing sports, like basketball, tennis, and like with friends, I'm so happy. And then my priority is like getting good grades, right? So then I do homework afterwards. By the time bedtime hits, I don't even have time to be on my phone, you know? So I think those are the things that come up top of mind. I could go on forever about this, but maybe you have thoughts to share too.
Yeah, absolutely. Honestly, I think, like you said, it's important to acknowledge that these apps, they are designed to be addictive. Like you said, like it is literally, it's like the cigarette industry, right? These things are hyper fixated, almost even more, right? We have like, almost on the other side, right? A lot of my audience are interested in working at these companies. And this is almost like the highest of prestige is like getting a software engineering ML job at Meta or TikTok. Well, they're literally recruiting the smartest students out there. People who are brilliant minds at like machine learning and psychology and stuff like that to design these apps to addict people, right? And they're paying them exorbitant salaries too to get like the best talent. So we have to think here, like it's very similar to the cigarette industry, right? These things are hyper optimized to hold your attention and keep you addicted. So it is worth acknowledging here that like this is not entirely your fault. This is the case where it's like this environment is set up and like the way modernity is to make this an especially difficult challenge. However, it's also your responsibility to handle it because the genie's out of the bottle. No one's gonna TikTok is getting banned, but no one's gonna put Instagram away. The idea of short form content. I mean, like people are scrolling on LinkedIn. Everything is short form, right? So that concept is out there. It's here. What do we do now? So it's your responsibility and our responsibility to actually take ownership of that, being like, okay, what protocols, systems, tools can we set up to actually control our use of social media so it's a healthy manner that actually benefits our lives? Another thing I like to think about here is this idea of viewing a highlight reel of someone else's life. It just never existed before. Think about it 50 to 100 years ago, right? You'd see your friends, your family, and you'd see them at a semi-regular basis, but you'd see all aspects of them. Let's say your friend goes through a breakup and they're crying. You see that aspect of them. Or they win an award and they're smiling, right? You see that too. So you see the light and dark of everyone. Well, on Instagram and social media, it is literally the highlight reel of everyone else's life. People purposely, I'm not that big on Instagram right now, but I know people, they will time their posts to be like, oh, I'm going on a crazy vacation. I'm going to get like Instagram photos and make like a perfect post with a perfect caption. And no one is sharing the dark side of their life. No one is sharing the days where they're, depressed because they failed an exam or they're feeling like someone passed away in their family. No one is sharing that online and no one is showing that. And even when they do show that, a lot of the times it's for the likes too, right? So it is important to acknowledge like this is not reality. Social media is not reality in any way, shape, or form. And when you spend 8 hours a day online, like you're spending 8 to 10 times more on Instagram than you are in real life. And you are literally consuming fake reality way more than real life. So it is important to recognize, one, you have to take ownership of this and like control your own usage. And two, this is like this unique difficulty that is nowhere close to real life. Like you said, now getting that out of the way, in terms of actual tactics, I've actually benefited a lot from recognizing that while it's important to have willpower and discipline, I almost can't trust myself with these apps. And I think you also mentioned earlier when we talked how you just kind of delete them off your phone. I think that's really important. I think a lot of people don't recognize the benefit of just deleting the apps. And if you need to access Instagram, if you need to access YouTube, you can always re-download them or go there in the browser. No one's stopping you. You can always access it whenever you want. But that little friction of just deleting the app and accessing when you need to is often enough to cut your screen time down by 30, 40, 50%. And that difference compounded over time is insane. Imagine getting 2 hours a day back for the rest of your life based on deleting the app. That's insane, right? And a lot of people will tell me, Aman, that doesn't work. I still go on Instagram all the time. Well, I would bet you your screen time's probably less. Even if you feel like you're still going on it, it's probably less. Or at least for me personally, I know that when I have the app deleted and I have screen time blockers like Opal and stuff running as well in the background, when those things are running, even though it feels like, oh, I still go on it, I just end up using it less because there's barriers in between there.
Yeah, for sure. Another tactic I thought of because of what you just said is you want to find the point at which you can use the least willpower, because you're not going to win if you rely on willpower. Like successful people, I use successful as a blanket term, but they're not relying on willpower all the time because it's exhausting. So whether it's deleting your app or first thing in the morning, just don't open it. That's already a win, because if you don't open up first thing in the morning, then you don't have that tease or that little taste already. But the moment you have that taste, you want more. And so it's a lot easier to resist it by simply putting it away before you even take out your homework after school, and to use that point as your point of escape, not something harder, right? So I think that's very important. The second thing would be like, it's so interesting. It's like so many people know that it's a highlight reel. Like, again, the things we're saying is not new information, but it's also realizing, hey, what are the motives behind not only the apps that are being made, but the creators on those apps? So what I find so ironic nowadays is a lot of self-improvement creators on YouTube, they'll say like, oh, follow me on Instagram. And, there's nothing wrong with asking that, like if they're already on Instagram, for example. But I think a lot of times they're kind of promoting their audience to be obsessed with them, to like always be viewing what's on their story, or like view this reel. Whereas it's better to be truthful and be like, hey, if you can, like delete the app first and foremost. And if you want some more motivation, like go watch me,
That takes guts for you to say that, to be honest, because it's like you are literally acting against your own monetary interest by saying that. You know what I mean? Like most creators, it's like I get it on a theoretical level. That's I applaud you. Cuz like you have the guts to be like, don't follow me on Instagram. Like do not re-download Instagram to view my stuff. If you're already on there and if you already feel like, hey, I'm going to be on here, you saying anything makes no difference. Okay, you can watch my stuff to get increased motivation, but I'm not telling you to re-download the app to follow me. I applaud you for that. That takes guts to say.
Thank you. No, I just, before I started creating, I already felt so many, I just felt there were so many things wrong with the social media landscape and influencers, because I wasn't an influencer at all. I was just like a consumer. And I kind of still have that exact same consumer mindset right now. So I'm going to act like how I would want those influencers to act, because that's also a driving force for why I worked so hard to become a creator in the first place.
Yeah. I guess this might be unrelatable as like most people are not creators, but there is a temptation to kind of like do what needs to be done to like get clicks and views and stuff like that, and kind of just like put your conscience aside. I think one example of when sometimes people do this, creators, they'll like act as if like I know my audience, like, oh, we're just one happy family. I know you're my best friend, stuff like that.
Besties.
Yeah, like, hey, besties. Yeah, but it's like, no, I'm looking at a camera right now. You feel like I'm looking at you. I'm looking at a camera right now. I'm in my room with a camera talking to this thing, and sure, thousands of people are watching that, but we don't know each other in real life. We're not friends. You don't have to actually follow anything I say. I'm just some guy online, right? And I've benefited immensely from like watching other people online. I think I enjoy content. Otherwise, I wouldn't be doing it. But I think it's important to acknowledge, hey, like I appreciate the guts you have to kind of like say the hard truth. Don't download Instagram to view my stuff, even though it is like better on paper for you to have more people viewing your stuff on Instagram.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think that's also why I have like fewer likes to like follower ratio, because you get more likes if people follow you from YouTube, because they actually care about you. They know you better. And so, yeah, I don't know. I just want to be the creator that I would want to watch. But to relate to your point about like, you don't really know the viewer. So I think most people are like that. I do want to say that like I look a lot at my viewer, and I like even do video calls with them. I try to reply to a lot of comments. Even now, today, I try to read every single one. And when I film, I actually pretend like I'm talking to one of my viewers personally, because that's something that kind of gets me less nervous too. Yeah.
Oh, nice. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, honestly, I'm gonna like pull the curtain back. You guys who are watching this video, I don't know any of you so far right now. So I mean, I have worked with a lot of them in like my own program, and I have like read the comments and stuff like that. But yeah, I appreciate it when YouTubers are like a bit honest with like, this is kind of like an interesting parasocial relationship where it's like, have you met any of your viewers IRL?
Yeah, I have. I had a in-person back to school event last year. Yeah,
was that here or somewhere else?
It was in New York. So
okay, how did that go?
It was great. And that's why I don't know. I feel like this is kind of like the people pleaser in me. I know it has a negative connotation. Maybe there's a better word for it, but I just like care so much about each person, because like when I read their comments, I can like feel the struggle they're in right now. And I care so much about each person reaching their potential. And I believe in their potential that I'm like, that's why I talk about phones all the time. I'm like, please, like if you did not have your phones, like you can achieve way greater things. Like you can get a 4-year college degree with the time that you spend on your phone.
I mean, 8 hours a day. Hell yeah.
Yeah.
That's a 40-hour work week, spending 8 hours a day on your phone. That's insane.
Yeah. Yeah.
Crazy. All right. I want to hear some more practical tips about actually achieving a 4.0 GPA in college while also sleeping 8 hours a night, while also maintaining a social life, and also you dealt with migraines as like a medical issue as well. Correct? So
Yeah.
Tell me like just actionable practical tips. What do you feel like helped you when it comes to actually balancing all of this stuff and still being able to do well?
Yeah, thank you. So just to clarify, the 8 hours average is probably high school. College, it varied from year to year, probably 7 to 8 as average. First semester at Caltech was not that much. But so the practical tips, I think like given the principles we said at the beginning as like a baseline, I think first of all, we want to look at how you study as like how you can increase your ROI. So instead of just throwing out words like, active recall or like Feynman technique, for each class it's different. So think about like in your organic chemistry class, how can you get the highest ROI and like learn the mechanisms faster? And that's going to be different from your physics class and different from your history class. So for example, in organic chemistry, memorizing is something that I find kind of annoying because I find it tedious, but I found kind of a way to do it in this like super difficult class. Like, as you know, organic chemistry is one of the hardest classes. So I was thinking, okay, I need to know these mechanisms. First of all, I think it will be easier if I try to understand each of them more, but I can't understand them right now. It's too complicated. So I'm just going to draw them over and over again until I get muscle memory. And then step by step, I'm going to try to think about like maybe one day I'll focus on one reason behind it. Number 2, I'll focus on the other reason, or day 2, I'll focus on another reason. And so this is a completely customized approach. Like no one told me about this. And so I think first, just like realize that there is no golden solution, and that's the best golden solution to start. Second of all, with college, it's super important to have a group of people that cheers you on, and then you feel like we're all in this together, like High School Musical. So Caltech was incredibly, incredibly hard, especially the first semester. It was the most difficult academics I've ever experienced. But what got me through that was on day 1 in my first chemical engineering class. It was like a class of 8 students. I was like, let's all make a group chat and let's make a study day weekly. So we know at this time, at this place, we're going to work on this set together. And by this time, we are definitely going to have it done. And that's going to be a few days before the due date. And so this took off a huge load of stress and just like unpredictability of like, when am I going to get this work done? Like the less you have to plan, I think it takes off a lot of mental load. And so chemical engineering, even though it's the class with the most requirements to graduate at Caltech, we had the reputation, our class at least, for being super on top of our work. And that's like high praise, I think, at Caltech. And that's simply because we found a system that we stuck to and was a non-negotiable every week.
Yeah, I think thinking ahead and proactively planning things is so underrated when it comes to doing well in anything. And it's almost necessary if your goal is to get all A's. Because frankly, from personal experience, every time I would set out to achieve 100, I would end up with like an 85, right? So you almost have to plan, I'm going to go 120%. I'm going to like put that extra mile and create those systems and structures to achieve even beyond what I think is necessary, right? The fact that you were planning a study day proactively every single week, even when I'm sure there were weeks where you're like, we don't actually need this. We've already finished our assignment, so why meet? No, you're still going to meet. You're still going to go through the protocol. You're still going to think ahead, right? Because in order to actually do well consistently over time, and achieve a standard of like all A's, right? You kind of need to actually put the extra mile in. And again, as someone who didn't get all A's, I can tell like almost like an N of 1 study, the classes where I did get A's in, it was because I did that. It was like because I created a study group, because I showed up ahead of time, because I started things early, because I communicated with my team, projects, professors. I put in that extra work and mile, and I went 120%, so I ended up with 95%. Whereas the other classes where I was like, it's not too bad. I can kind of chill, do this last minute, go for 95, 96%. Those are the ones I ended up with like 82 or 83%, right? So I think there is great value in doing things extra beyond what you feel is necessary and you feel like might be too much. In fact, often lands you where you want to be.
Yeah, for sure. That's the one thing I didn't address when you asked about like migraines, but migraines required me ever since like I was age 12 to be even more ahead and to over prepare even more, simply because I had this disadvantage where a migraine could come up anytime and boom, like 4 hours of my day are wiped. And that's a lucky day if I recover after 4 hours. So that is definitely key. And I'd also say to kind of be, again, like lazy in a smart way. So I would talk to my upperclassmen friends, whether it was in high school or college, and they would give me the textbooks to study from, so I wouldn't even have to go buy it myself. They would tell me, hey, like, you don't need to read this, just read this instead. That saves time, you know? And then even just talking to your professor and be like, hey, is there extra credit? Or do you have a mock exam for this? You don't get what you don't ask for. So I think that is a very key skill in life as well. You have to form those connections yourself. And how do you form those connections and think of the things to proactively ask for? You have to let your brain work. You have to let your brain run. And when you're in class, you know, right after class, the first thing you do is scroll. So using a phone reason again, then of course you're not going to think of any kind of resource you can ask for, you know?
Absolutely. Yeah, I think it's honestly a life hack to take the practice test and just use that to guide your studying. This is something me and my brother discussed as well. Like the way he would do it is he would literally just go get the last year final or midterm that the professors often give you to use to review. He would start by doing that almost and use that to guide what are the most important sections. And that would like do a lot of benefit. Whereas like a lot of people, they're like, I need to know every little bit in detail of this. I'm going to highlight the whole book. I'm going to read the whole thing front cover to cover like it's a fiction book, and then I'll do well on the test. Whereas if you kind of like go from a backwards to forwards approach, like you start with the exam, you try that, see like what are the areas you're weak in, what are the areas you're good at, then specifically go to the textbook and work on that. Same thing with, like you said, about asking the upperclassmen. People who've taken a class, they know exactly what the important and most difficult concepts are. They're almost like an expert or like a coach. And you can ask them, hey, help me understand. And within like a 20-minute conversation, you can already get so far ahead. So 100%, that's a great approach.
Yeah, networking, soft skills.
Absolutely.
Super
so
undervalued. Super undervalued.
Yeah. Actually, I want to hear more about the migraines. So like, how are those for you? When did they start? Do you still deal with them? Because I feel like a lot of people deal with this, but they don't talk about it.
Yeah, I think it's something like 30% of women, at least. Women tend to get them more. I don't know why. It's very
unfortunate.
Yeah, no. I saw a headline the other day that Meghan Trainor performed a song with a migraine, and I was like, bro, like I'm so sorry. But yeah, so the first time I got one, I think it was age 12, and it was after the ultimate buffet with my family. Mm-hmm. So I ate this bacon wrapped sausage. That's what I remember as like one of the main things I ate. And so later, well, I guess first of all, the migraine. So what I noticed was my hand just felt disconnected. Like I would lift it up to like hold my fork, and then it was like, it's not there, you know? It's kind of like when you're on Zoom and your screen is like flipped. And so when you move your right hand, you see your left hand moving.
Whoa.
Yeah. So I realized recently that's how it felt like, because I accidentally had my camera on backwards. So I had that first, and it was just like scary, you know, you don't know what this is. And then I started feeling numb and tingly, mostly in my like pinky and like fourth finger. And then you start to lose your vision too on I think the same side. So basically, like if it's on your left side, your left hand is numb, and then your left vision is also gone. It's like blurry. So like basically I would only be able to see half your face right now, and I wouldn't be able to recognize who you are.
So the one half would just be blurry, or would you see nothing at all?
It's blurry. It's like they call it an aura, and basically it's flashing like a light kind of too. And I don't really know why I can't see it, but it's just like that. And then the opposite of your side hurts. And so you know how your right side of your brain controls your left side of your body. So that's why it does that. Your left vision goes away, so your right brain hurts. And it's like this pounding, like stabbing knife pain. And so after that, I just like went home immediately, tried to sleep it off. But it was like so scary and sad. I was like crying, like it just hurt so much. Like I would not wish that pain on anyone. And I've been having that since age 12, like pretty consistently, like honestly, maybe like once a month through like middle school and like high school. I think maybe more in high school. College, I think decreased a little bit. And then right now the frequency has decreased more. So overall, it's like affected a lot of normal life activities. One time I had a Blackpink concert, and then the day of, I got a migraine. I was so sad. But then I kind of pushed through, and like while I was still recovering, we walked all the way to Jersey, and then we walked all the way to take the train to Jersey. And by the time they started performing, I was like better to like actually sit through the performance. So I've kind of learned to have to like push through it. And again, like pain breeds strength. So I think that's also why I have like a higher pain tolerance now. Yeah.
So do you ever deal with them now? I think you said like it's even less. Is it like once every 3 months? What's the frequency nowadays?
It's, yeah, maybe like once every 3 months. I had two in Japan, September. Like that one, like 1 week trip, I had two, which was so awful.
That's
And so,
horrible.
yeah. And so I think it's just like the sensitivity of your body to like the air or the water or something. Like there's no cure. So I don't
Yeah.
really know.
I think there are medications that help, right? Have you ever tried, just out of curiosity, any of
I
those or not? Not really.
So I have taken like a pretty strong painkiller
Okay.
before, but I try not to
Hmm.
rely on painkiller because
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. My parents are kind of against like
Yeah. Yeah.
like just to prevent
Mhm.
any like potential negative effects down the
For
road.
sure.
So as of now, I don't really take anything, but
Hmm.
like I find that when I'm like scared for a migraine on that day, like sometimes like it'll happen. And so it's kind of like a placebo
Mm.
effect, which is really unfortunate. And like for a while there was a correlation of like something important happening that night and then I have a migraine during the day and I'm just like, why?
Yeah. It was almost like a stress thing, right? It was like, or like increase the chance of it happening. Yeah, I don't think I've ever experienced like chronic migraines, like maybe once or twice in my life. I remember when I was a kid, I got one just randomly. It was like so bad I was just crying, like you said. And
Yeah.
it's like I'm like, oh, like what's happening? I think my brain took me to the hospital. I think, or my parents took me to the hospital, because they thought like something serious happened to me because I was like, I've never been like that before. And then occasionally, like probably once every 1 to 2 years, I'll have something like that. I tend to get nauseous as well. Like I'll like
Mm.
throw up randomly.
Yeah, me too. I forgot to mention that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So migraines, horrible, not good. But I guess if a listener has migraines, I'm pretty sure there are like new treatments that have come out in the last 1 or 2 years just for migraines because it is such a chronic issue. Like you mentioned, like 30% of women experience it. So I think it is worth like reaching out to a doctor and seeing if there's like anything they can do there for
Mhm.
you.
Yeah, for sure. My friend uses a medication, and in fact, she actually filmed a podcast with me. And then after she was like, "Yeah, I had a migraine during that." And I was like, "What? How are you functioning?" And then so she said, "There's this medication, so I might try that out just in
Yeah.
case, like."
As a backup.
Yeah, because I have some important things happening. So
Yeah, absolutely. And also, it sounds horrible. It's like 4 to 6 to 12 hours of just constant pain is like, I don't know. From my perspective, it's like I'll take whatever this medication does to me
Yeah.
to avoid like an entire day of suffering.
Yeah.
So awesome. All right, let's actually talk about your educational journey here. So tell me a bit about your youth. Where did you grow up? What was your education like? And then tell me about the journey of making it into a great university like Caltech.
Sure. So I grew up in Colorado for I think the 10 years of my life before going to Caltech. My school was very, I guess, just to understand the demographics, very white. Colorado is very white. So there wasn't necessarily a lot of competition like in California schools. So my schooling from like middle school, high school, like there were other high achieving students like me in the highest math class level, for example. But I just am aware that like it's not as competitive as California. So, maybe I couldn't have been valedictorian in California. That's all I'm saying. So basically, I think that what really helped was having like one or two students in my year, like also being like high achievers and like working really hard because it's kind of motivating to have some kind of competition, right? Because you kind of like want to prove to yourself, like, oh, if they did this, then I can do it too. It's like a positive way to use competition. And so that's kind of how I guess like there were external factors, not only the intrinsic motivation to get me to work hard, but the intrinsic drive, I should say, mostly came from my parents, from the upbringing that like they worked so hard in their schooling in China to have this opportunity for us to be in the US. And having visited China multiple times, I was aware of how privileged we were to be in the United States and that they suffered things that we could have never had. And even though some people might say maybe that's like a toxic way of like being driven, I think it's actually pretty great. It's like it's very empowering and can be beautiful too because you're seeing your family level up generation after generation. And what drives me is to help my kids have even more opportunities that I didn't have. And so I guess that's kind of establishing context. As far as getting into Caltech, what's interesting is I never thought I could get into like a top school. It wasn't a goal. It was not a goal when I was in middle school or like the first like 3 years of high school. I thought that people who went to Harvard and Ivy Leagues were Einsteins. And I was like, I'm not Einstein, you know? Like I know I'm like decently smart, or I guess I'm good at getting good grades, but I'm not an Einstein. And so basically I never really like did everything for the purpose of getting into a top school. Like I know so many people have the pressure to do nowadays. I was just like, I'm going to max out the activities I think are good. Basically, I get shiny object syndrome. I still do. And so I would like join a bunch of activities, not for the sake of necessarily maxing it out, but because I was like, oh, I'm missing out on this. I'm missing out on that. I want to be a leader here and a leader there. And so that's kind of the approach I took to do well. And then I did math competitions too. That specifically in combination with Promise, Program in Mathematics for Young Scientists, which is a prestigious 6-week math camp in Boston. That combination, I think, is really what pushed me to get into Caltech. So that specifically. And I think that it was only when it came time to apply or consider schools that I was like, oh, wait, I have stats and like experiences that can get me into those schools. So now I'm going to apply. And so that's when I realized, oh, Stanford's my dream school. Unfortunately, I got rejected, as I talked about in my videos before.
Famously. One of your videos.
Or infamously. But yeah, that's kind of the story of how I got into a top 10 school or like Caltech specifically.
Yeah. So when you said math competitions, was it like Math Olympiad and stuff like that, or some other stuff?
Yeah, it was like math Olympiads, state competitions, locally, like college organized ones. The AMC, anyone, you probably know that. No, yeah, your brother did that too.
Oh, yeah. That was one of his main things in life at the time. I find that so interesting because I feel like a lot of people, I feel like there exists an Ivy League industrial complex nowadays in these schools where it's like, from a young age, parents are like, I want my kid to go to Stanford or Harvard or Yale or MIT, these schools. And it's like almost like they're being trained to like from age 4 or 5. Like, we need to hire these coaches. We need to put them in these sports. They need to become like elite level rowers. They need to take up fencing, right? Like all these like weird sports, right? And that they need to do just to get into those schools. So I find it so interesting how like you never even had that in your mind, that it was like, and it's very understandable. I feel like there is a perception. I think part of it is because you grew up in Colorado, right? I think maybe if you had grown up in Boston or San Francisco or Los Angeles or something around like a massively competitive school and community, maybe it was like, oh, like everybody wants to get into these schools, so we need to do all these things from age 8. But I find it super interesting how like you kind of just pursued your interests more than doing things that you felt like you had to do to get into those schools.
Yeah, for sure. I feel very fortunate in that regard because knowing that I am a relatively ambitious person, if I were surrounded by those people, my teenage years would have been a lot more stressful. And I also want to give some credit to my parents too for not being tiger parents. Especially, I think the priorities was just like, you have to be healthy and happy and do what needs to be done. And, you know, in each time period of your life, you know, when you're in school, it's just prioritize school. It's like very simple, you know? And so knowing that, I think it's a very automatic thing that you end up succeeding academically or in whatever area of your life. And so I think that's part of the branding that I've kind of talked about. It's like I accidentally achieved things. I accidentally got into a top 10 school. I accidentally became valedictorian. And it's simply because I was just so focused on the actions that can take you there. And I wasn't stressed I wasn't stressed about the goal. I didn't even have that goal. And so naturally I just got there. And it's a very happy and sustainable way to get that.
Yeah. I feel like that's way better. Because like a lot of people, they're like, from day, you know, they're 10 years old, they're like, I need to be up there at Harvard. It's like, so it's like so much pressure, so much effort, like arguments at their home. They get like 1 A- and they're like, have like a panic attack because it's like, oh my God, I'm not going to get into Harvard now. Whereas you kind of like focus more on the mindset side of things. And you kind of like, I'm sure you would have been okay, even if you didn't get into Caltech, you got into some other school you were interested in, right? You'd be like, yeah, like it's a school. Obviously, maybe you like, you said, oh, you didn't get into Stanford. And that was your dream school. So actually tell me about that. Like, how did you feel when you got that experience back?
So I think that when I work very hard at something, when it comes to the time to achieve the accolade, for example, I'm like pretty confident. So I was like, I now know that I was delusional because Stanford is Stanford. I mean, at the time I still knew Stanford was Stanford, but like I was pretty confident because I was like, dang, look at those stats. Look at that
Yeah,
essay.
like on paper, sick.
Yeah. And so like when you have high hopes, you just have so much farther to fall. So I was very sad about that. And to be fair, like at an age when you care about what other people think of you too, being known as like the smart girl or like, oh, Amy's so smart, valedictorian, whatever. My peers expected me to get into a really good school. And Colorado does not know what Caltech is, unfortunately. And like, I'm not saying like clout is that like important, but it does give some value, which is why we chase it, right? And so that's why I was like even more like upset that I didn't get to Stanford because it didn't seem to match that like badge of honor that other people expected from me. So I did get into UC Berkeley too. I didn't actually apply to like many schools overall, but yeah, I just didn't. It didn't like give that crowning jewel of honor like at the end of senior year that like people expected.
Yeah, I feel like that's almost worse than getting rejected for yourself. It's because like everybody expects something, right? Like I never really like applied or expected to get into super top schools, but I was also known to be like one of the smarter kids around. And I remember one day I was at the gym and it was after my senior year of college or of high school. And I was like working out and some like random white dude from my school came up to me. He was like, "Oh, Aman, how are you? We hadn't talked in like maybe 6 to 12 months." And he was like, "Oh, where are you going to school?" I was like, "I'm going to Wisconsin." He was like, "Wisconsin? I thought you were going to go to Harvard or something like that." And I was like, so that was a bit of a sobering moment as well. It was almost like the other people's expectations of like being the smart kid who like has to achieve all these things. But yeah, I find that so when you got that, I guess maybe it's in your video, but like when you got that, like what was your timeline and how did you feel? So you said like it wasn't easy to get that rejection letter. So walk me through like your thought process and how you recovered from that.
Yeah, so the opening up the admissions letter was, I think, with my dad there, the email. My dad's very supportive and he's like kind of my biggest cheerleader, even though, you should be your own.
Mhm.
And so when we saw it, like he was very sad for me too. It wasn't like a parent being disappointed in their kid, which I'm very grateful for. And so he knew how much pain I felt. And so he, like, all my parents did was try to comfort me and be like, no, you're already really good. Like, it's just their subjective judgment. And so I did, spend many nights crying and then like waking up with like puffy eyes and things like that. But I think it just took time and like being busy with other things that like eventually you just don't have the space to like think about it. Kind of like what I was saying earlier about time on your phone. It's like, oh, I had like AP exams to study for or like other things and tennis regionals, just other things that bring your life joy. And so I can't put a timeline on it, but eventually it fades away to be not so significant. I think there was always kind of a sting that like lasted for a few years, but once I had this great experience at Caltech and this unique like Hogwarts experience, honestly, because like Caltech's split into these different houses with the personalities, and then I made all these great friends. And then because of Caltech, there's the butterfly effect of later meeting my fiance. So I'm like, oh, good thing I didn't get into
Yeah,
Stanford.
what if you went to Stanford? You would have missed out like on literally the love of your life. So
Yeah.
it's like
Yeah, like you
yeah.
just never know. And I think that's why I realized like as long as you're trying your best, your life will be good,
Mhm.
and things that should work out will work out.
Definitely. Yeah, for me, I never, I guess it was really like focused on one college. For me, it was like music. So I played the saxophone in high school. That was my main instrument. That was my main activity. And in like my high school, the all state competition was like, this is the biggest thing when it came to music. It's like everybody in band and orchestra and choir wanted to make all state. Because in my high school, like, they would literally put your photo on the wall. It'd be like this like large portrait, and there was the all-state wall, and everybody walks past and sees the smiling faces of all the people with their medals, holding their instruments, and grinning from ear to ear up on that wall. And even when I was 14 years old as a freshman, I would walk there and be like, I'm gonna be up there one day. So that was like my number one intention. And also, it was like considered the highest status, coolest thing anyone could do in band. Is like the all staters were like a squad. It's almost like royalty walks in and everybody's like hushing down. Right? It was, which is crazy considering these are 16 and 17-year-olds. But I obviously I went to the all-state competition my senior year, like did a ton of practice, even switched instruments because I was like, this other kind of saxophone, like alto saxophone is going to be easier than tenor saxophone. I was like, oh, like running these numbers, doing these like analytics, right? And who made it? And then eventually I didn't even get it. Like I didn't even make it to the semifinals because like in hindsight, I think it was a huge mistake to switch instruments because like it was a new instrument. I was like, what the? in 6 months, I think I can like do this at the highest level. But I remember in that moment, like it was like extremely depressing. Like I saw that, I like cried. I just like went for a walk by this cornfield in Iowa, outside of the high school. The teacher hugged me, and I remember on the way back, like a bunch of people had made All-State. They were like, the day after All-State is an interesting thing, or the bus ride back, because you have some people who like they made it, so their dreams have come true. They're all like smiling, taking selfies, posting on Instagram with like the I made All-State and like holding out their certificates. And then there's the other side of the bus of all the kids who wanted to make it who didn't. Right. So it was quite a sobering reality. And I remember someone actually told me who made All-State multiple years in a row. She was like, it's great, but it's just one weekend in Des Moines, Iowa. So it's like, if you actually take a step back and think about what was All-State, it was you get your photo on the wall of our high school. And for a weekend, you show up at this concert with all the other like All-Staters when you're 16 years old and you play in this concert, and then you just go home. And a lot of the people who made All-State after the All-State concert, they just like stopped playing for like 1 or 2 months because they didn't even care about it. They would just like not even practice for like a couple months because it was just for the competition and the prestige. And also, most of the people who made All-State in my high school now don't even play their instruments anymore. So it's like, and in fact, me and both my brothers made All-State and I didn't. And like all three of us don't even play our instruments anymore. So it's like, I'm looking at this in retrospect and I'm like, it literally made no difference at all. Yet it was like the most important, it was like the defining moment of my high school experience. I was like, my God, I didn't make All-State. I'm so embarrassed. It's so horrible. But looking 6-7 years back, it's like, it literally made no impact at all. If you saw the people who made All-State and the people who didn't, who went and tried out and did it, and you look between them, you would not see any difference.
Yeah.
So,
oh my gosh. That's such a great story. I feel like that's going to help so many people listening where like maybe they had some kind of quote unquote failure and they're like, it's the end of the world. But all we need is some perspective, right? Because when you're 16, 17 years old, you've only lived 16 years of your life. And so, yeah, this is the peak of your life because this is your age right now, right? But I mean, I guess having brothers was really like unhelpful, It's like, well, sorry. I guess that was worded really weird. I mean, like brothers who like won it and you didn't.
Yeah, that
didn't.
was, yeah.
That didn't
It was
help.
almost worse because it was like,
yeah.
I don't know. It was like, I feel like maybe having an older brother who made it and me not making it might have been worse, but it was like, yeah, it was tough because my younger brothers did do it. But also, I guess like looking back, I can kind of be like, oh, I'm like the cool older brother who like paved the way and they like sunk it in, you know what I mean? So I can definitely do that as well. But yeah, it was really tough with like having brothers who were super close to me doing the same things. Do you have siblings, by the way, or no?
Yeah, I have a younger sister.
Oh, nice.
And yeah, she just graduated from Caltech last year.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Wow, same school.
Yeah.
Then you guys are like 3 years apart in age?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah. Yeah, it's so funny. My parents never pushed us or like, had 2 daughters being like, yep, they're going to a top school. But,
it just happened.
Yeah. So
is there a reason she picked Caltech? Like,
because of me.
Really?
I really liked Caltech and I would always talk about the fun experiences. So like she was like, oh, I want to go too.
Yeah.
I feel like for the average person who like wouldn't get an insider point of view, they would not be that excited about Caltech because it's like I was scared to go to Caltech. I did not want to go.
Yeah, I don't know. All I knew about Caltech was like it's like one of the most competitive, hardest schools to get into in the world, and have like a small class size too. So there's like no grade inflation and stuff. Like that's a perception from the outside. But you mentioned like this Hogwarts thing. Like that seems super cool.
Yeah, it was a really fun and unique experience, and I found that I thrive in an environment where there were other passionate, inspiring people around me who were like working hard towards something because I didn't really get that a lot in my school in Colorado. And I also felt like because of the small size, there were more opportunities. I didn't feel that way. Actually, it was that way. Like I could work in a Nobel Prize laureate's lab, as an undergrad student. And I just passed these on to my sister and she was like, heck yeah,
Yeah.
Yeah. And granted, I could play basketball there. She could play volleyball there. And so it was kind of like a win-win to be a collegiate athlete too.
Yeah, absolutely. Because like, if you look at any big other school or even like a public school and stuff, you often have to like jump through hoops and like fight the competition to get those opportunities. But it sounds like you guys had a great time at Caltech.
Yeah, for sure. And the most important thing that is very obvious from my Caltech vlogs is the people. So I made Caltech vlogs where like I asked so many of my friends, like, what's your favorite thing about Caltech? Down the line, everyone said the people. And so when you are in a super rigorous, tough environment, you need to have great friends around you, all going through the same thing. If it was competitive, I guarantee you, I would have been like, Angel, that's my sister, don't come here. Worst experience ever.
Real quick, guys, if you want to stay up to date with me and get weekly productivity advice, subscribe to Thoughtful Thursday, my very own email newsletter. That's where I share in real time all the techniques, lessons, and frameworks that I picked up that week. The newsletter subscribers always hear it first. You can subscribe at amanmanazir.com/newsletter. Let's talk about YouTube. You've been posting on YouTube for almost 5 years and a couple months. So tell me about that story. So why did you start your channel and what happened during those first couple of years on the channel? What was that like?
Sure. So I started with Caltech vlogs. In February of 2020, I decided I was going to vlog an entire week at Caltech. It was very spontaneous, but it was based on how in the previous years, I was just thinking, oh, Caltech's so unique, so special, but there's no day in the life out of a Caltech student out there. So I take, be the change you want to see in the world a little seriously. So I was like, I'm going to do it. So literally, I made that decision on Sunday night, started filming on Monday. Then we all know what happened in March 2020. COVID hit. So I had more time to edit my vlogs. And suddenly I was like, wait, the students who got into Caltech from high school, they don't know what it's going to be like. So they can't make an informed decision. So I reached out to Caltech admissions and I was like, hey, I have this footage and I can make these videos. Maybe we can share them with the students. And it was really awesome because they got super excited about the idea and they even offered to, pay a little bit of money just so I could edit them faster so we could get them out faster to the students and parents. And so that was really my intro into starting this one main channel, Amy Wang, where, I got 500 subscribers from it because Caltech's not very known and it's a very small school. And so that was my start. And I guess I should caveat that this is my second YouTube channel. My first one was a singing channel. But I don't think of it as that relevant because speaking in the video versus singing is very different to grow an audience.
Is the channel still out there, your first one, or was it down?
Yeah, it's
It is?
Uh-huh.
Really?
Yeah.
Nice.
Yeah.
So do you sing a lot? We've never talked about that.
Yeah.
Is singing a big thing you like to do?
Yeah, I love singing. My sister and I have loved singing ever since we were little,
Really?
on road trips, Taylor Swift, Miley Cyrus, all that kind of stuff. So yeah. But yeah, so I guess maybe the singing channel helped me have a little bit of an intro of how to upload a video. But yeah, so I would then keep making videos sporadically just for pure fun. Wouldn't take it seriously at all. Wouldn't want to tell anyone I'm making YouTube videos because there's a really big stigma behind it. And I also just purely wasn't confident in my ability to make a good video and to speak confidently on camera. So I kind of messed with it a little bit just for fun. Then after graduating, I started management consulting. So that was my first big girl job. And at the same time, I would do YouTube purely as a hobby. And I found that consulting made me really miserable because now I had this work, but it wasn't where if I work harder, I get rewarded. In fact, in the corporate world, if you work hard or you're efficient, you get more work. And also the work I was doing, I felt like I just wasn't having an ROI in school. I wasn't learning how I wanted to learn. And I just was, I kind of had an existential crisis oh, this is the rest of my life. And so YouTube became even more important to me because it was a creative outlet. And so then 4 months into my job, I decided to get an editor. And so I was like, YouTube is so cool that I want to see if I can spread my messages to more people. I want to really understand the full potential of what I'm doing because I'm enjoying putting work in something and seeing it grow. Because just in school, right, I'm excited to see my potential and to take harder classes and stuff. But in work, I wasn't getting that satisfaction. And so that's why I hired an editor super early on, with only 1,000 subscribers. So that way I actually start posting once a week. To get that consistency as the top tip that YouTubers say. So during that time, it was pretty hard because I was getting a few hundred views, as we all do when we start out. But I didn't feel that much pressure because I still had my job. So then fast forward 1 year later, 2023, April, so my fiance, Sean, and I, we realized, we're moving to New York because he got into business school there. And that was our top choice, to be in New York City. So I quit from my job because it was based in LA and they wanted us to go back in office after the COVID stuff. And I just realized, you know what? I don't want to recruit and get another job. And so I continued YouTube. And, during that 1 year that I fast forwarded through, YouTube and consulting juxtaposed each other so much that the more I didn't like consulting, the more I liked YouTube. It was kind of like that. And still like struggling a lot, but it was just like a lot of fun for me. And so then coming into New York, I did have a few like side hustle, like part-time jobs just because I was very risk averse. But eventually I was like, if I am to give myself a fighting chance, just like the choice I made in the beginning of hiring an editor, I have to give my all and just see where it takes me. And granted, I did have an acceptance through the deferred program for MBA MIT Sloan. So I could go back to school and have something for sure. And so I went all in. September 2023, I was feeling so discouraged, just like videos not doing so hot. And I stumbled upon some study videos. I was like, I was kind of a good student. I'm curious to see what tips they have, What if I did the same thing as them? And then I listened and I was like, wait, these are getting hundreds, thousands of views. And they're just like prescriptive tips, like the same ones in every single video. And I was like, I didn't even use these. Or like, I didn't even like think of these or watch these videos myself when I was a student. Like active recall. I had no idea what active recall was. And then like 5-minute technique. I was like, what the heck are these terms? And I realized I was like accidentally doing them. And I got so like triggered almost from those videos that then I made my video that was the start of it all.
Mm-hmm.
And I just ranted basically with 3 stories of how I had a really horrible academic experience, but then I brought my grades up because of, certain mindsets and habits and like strategies, finding resources, kind of things we talked about before. That video blew up and I was like, okay, that was very fun to make. I was very passionate about it. And it seems to be the method through which I could share my ideas because I wasn't necessarily sharing any new ideas from my past videos, but the packaging was directed towards students who turns out like it's a very good niche to be in because people are constantly looking for new advice and students are actually the people who really needed to hear what I had to say. And so I just continued in that direction to try and make what my viewers wanted to see. Not like only looking at what they wanted, but it was like in line with my values and like what I wanted to make too. And so I think it was just really finding that synergy that helped ride the wave all the way until the subscribers I have now, which is crazy, honestly. I still can't believe it. So
yeah.
Yeah.
Wait, okay, hold up. You were not posting study videos for 3.5 years? What were you making content about? Because like, obviously I recently met you. So in my mind, I was like, you must have been sharing study tips for 4 or 5 years. And then it was just, compounding, exponential. But no, like you were making something else. So what were you doing for 3.5 years before you switched to study content?
Yeah, that's a great question. That's a great question that, only from an outside point of view would be like, wait a minute.
Yeah.
And so I started with Caltech vlogs. Then like over the summer of internship, I made some random videos of like hiking, going to the beach and checking out all the people hanging out and making fun of them because COVID's happening. That was a funny video though. I was very proud of that. Mm-hmm. And then also grocery shopping for the first time, just like silly things. And what I eat in a day. Then I made a video about, I think like SAT, ACT. I think I was trying to use some things that I had experience in, but I always felt like it was like uncool. Like I made a couple how to get straight A's videos, but I was kind of just, I didn't feel like my heart was in it. And I think that's why like feeling triggered by other people like really helped bring out what I actually thought, And other videos I made was like why I left chemical engineering to be a consultant and then day in the life of a consultant, feeling bad about being a consultant. So it's just things about my life and like getting my life together, a few vlogs here or there, an MIT versus Caltech video. And yeah, I mean, my channel's there and none of the videos are deleted. So
that's so inspirational though, because it's like, again, I haven't followed your journey the entire time. I'm only just getting to know you now and kind of looking back, right? But the idea that you were kind of just doing random things here and there, like this fun vlog here, this experience about consulting versus chemical engineering, Caltech versus MIT, kind of all over the place. And then all of a sudden, suddenly something just worked. And then within 1 year, 20K to 500K subscribers or something insane like that within like a 12, 13, 14 month period, right? Once you found that thing that actually works. I think a lot of people, when it comes to actually growing a personal brand and growing on YouTube, are kind of held back. They're like, I don't know what my niche should be. I don't know what can I make videos about. This is not getting any views. I don't know what to talk about. But it sounds like you kind of just followed your interest and then eventually something worked.
Yeah, I think the idea that, oh, I should pick my niche is completely backwards because we should go with our passion and that becomes our niche. You know, like how are you going to pick a niche and then do it for hopefully years and years to like get financial value out of it? And then like you'll be tired and burnt out. Then like what's the point of like starting then, you know? And I also believe that with passion, you can make things better and you can connect better. And that's exactly what I found with that one video that blew up, that like because I was so triggered, it brought out all of the experience and emotions and philosophies that I realized would be helpful in the student context. And yeah.
I also feel like it's really hard to know what's going to do well on YouTube. Like I actually started with study videos. So I started with like study tube, but computer science version, right? I was like, how I study as a computer science student, Feynman technique, how to take notes as a computer science student, Anki, Quizlet, Notion, all these like note-taking apps, Todoist, like all these productivity things, right? And none of that really took off until I actually started to lean into what was like my quote unquote unfair advantage. What did I have differently that I could actually talk about? And eventually I realized it was like the software engineering career side of things, like getting internships at companies like Amazon, Shopify, stuff like that, and sharing those tactics and tools, or getting my first internship and stuff like that. That eventually, like, I was shooting all over the place. I made like day in the life of a computer science student, vlogs, stuff like that. I made videos about eye strain because like eye strain is something I was really dealing with, and like I was able to like focus and study and stuff like that. And like it just kind of out of nowhere, like some videos about internships and software engineering and careers started to blow up. And I think really good advice when it comes to YouTube is if you want to do it as a business and get views, right? It's like make videos you're interested in, but then when something does well, you probably want to double down on that and see how that goes. So I have a sense that that's what you did. Like you kind of were like a bit of it all over the place in terms of content, and you were following your interest and passion, but then there was a certain topic which like you really resonated with. And your background is actually like quite unique in that space too, because you have like a few branding principles that work really well, right? Like Caltech 4.0, high school valedictorian, giving controversial study tube advice almost. Because like you're kind of like the anti-study tube study YouTuber. Not like you're against the space or something, but it's like the fact that you're like, oh, like active recall, Feynman technique. I like didn't even know about that. I did all this other stuff. Like as someone who was like super in like the active recall Feynman technique space, it's like, oh wait, whoa, I need to pay attention now because there's like a whole other perspective to it. So I feel like all of those factors kind of like went together to make you have that like insane run from that point on.
Yeah, I find the journey behind it really fascinating now in hindsight. Also because, you know, that video that blew up, I didn't even almost care that if it did well or not. Because after I made it and I was reviewing it, I was like about to post it, I was like, this is a sick video. I was like, this is incredible. I love how I said these things. And when I started YouTube, I was like, I just want more people to hear these advice that I think would be helpful. And so like all of that advice was just encapsulated in this very passionately spoken video. And it's not like, again, nothing different really from like what I was saying before, but I just felt like, oh, this is it. And I had a feeling it might do well because it was the back to school season. But it's like the video itself that I was just so excited about that I was like, you know, I'm going to keep making videos like this and ride that wave. And it turns out it was a wave that gave me like
it was
numbers.
A tsunami, not just a wave.
Yeah, it turns out it was not only a wave of like finding the passion and like what I could speak well in, but it was also something that matched what other people needed.
Yeah, there was a market need for it, I think. Like there's something about your unique voice and tone and style and ideas with also your background combined with like a certain like angle on YouTube, which seems to like have done really well. And over the past few days of like research your channel and stuff like that in preparation for this conversation. And I think I listened to your podcast about like how you went from like a crazy, like from 20K subscribers to like a couple 100,000 or even 400,000 or 500,000, something like that, right? And one of the comments said, one reason, or the commenter thought you had done really well is because you were consistently posting during that time. So it wasn't a period where like you had one video go viral and then you just like stopped posting for 6 months. You kind of like, you kept feeding the flame, you kept feeding the fire. And that person was like, oh, like I subscribed because I just kept seeing you on my feed. Right. And so I find that also really interesting. It's like you had like, first of all, you were passionate about the topic, which is obviously the most important thing. The passion definitely showed in the video because you said like, hey, this is something I'm really interested in, something I genuinely care about. And also, you didn't just switch to some other topic. You didn't just give up. You like saw that was working, and then you just kept going more and more and more and more and more. And it kind of just like built that flywheel of compounding, right? So yeah, honestly, I wish I knew that I should do that earlier on. Only recently that I started like kind of like really dialing into the niche of like getting careers in tech. And then the channel's like got a lot more views and subscribers since then, right? But I think that's like honestly great advice in YouTube is like find what works and then stick to it.
Yeah. I mean, you say you wish you knew sooner, but it took me like 2.5 years.
Yeah, me too, to be honest.
Yeah, no. But what's funny is that like actually during the 3 months from 20K to 100K, I don't think I capitalized the best way off of it.
Really?
Because I had some videos that I already planned previously or already filmed that were more related to college. And so I was like, oh, I still have to post these because I already made it, like the sunk cost fallacy.
Mhm.
And so I was trying to like spread those out with like the study videos. And, that just kind of hurt momentum. Because like if I had also made those study videos, then maybe I could have surpassed 100K like a lot faster.
Yeah. Well, you know what? Yeah.
No, just a
I
lesson.
think, yeah, in the end, it worked out really well. Okay. Let's talk about copying on YouTube.
Ooh.
I think this is something that me and you've really bonded over because I've never like talked to another YouTuber who has dealt with such rote copying. For context, for my audience who hasn't seen your videos on this, there was a YouTuber a couple months ago who was one of your friends who ended up posting a video or copying one of your most viral videos with a similar title and similar thumbnail. And not only that, he had actually copied the script almost word by word, or like beat by beat by beat. And in your video talking about this occasion, you literally put your video and his video side by side, and you could just see this is almost ridiculous how obvious this is, right? And I think copying on YouTube is an epidemic now. I know people in my niche and other people's niches, and you can literally see like the same title, the same thumbnail. It kind of takes all the originality out of it, right? Because, and I kind of understand why people do it because it's easy, right? It's like, oh, I know this is going to work. I don't need to think about my own original idea. I can just steal their idea, and it's probably going to do quite well because they came up with something original. I'm just going to copy that and ride that wave. So I guess I wanted to ask, what was that process like of discovering that this person copied your video? How do you feel about copying on YouTube, and why speak out about it at all?
Yeah. So when I first started on YouTube, I would just make my own titles and thumbnails from scratch. I just thought I have to come up with a great idea. I didn't even consider copying was a thing that people would do. So that's kind of like how I started. But then, like you mentioned, I started seeing a lot of titles and thumbnails being copied. And when I started taking off during that period after the killer video, I started seeing some of my stuff be copied, title and thumbnail wise. And at first I was like pretty distraught. I was like, it took me hours, even days to think of that, and they just took it within a second. And so then I was like, wait, if this is the way the game is played, like, isn't this encouraging for us to not have such high integrity? It's like, that's the thing with social media, like you were saying before, of like people encouraging to follow on Instagram or like people trying to sell things, right? It's like the system is made so like people will be pushed to do things that are not so great. And so I was like feeling really distraught by like the whole principle of the thing. And so I started having some other like study creators. I wouldn't honestly call myself a study creator because I'm more of like a live your best life creator. Mm-hmm. But they reached out, and then because I struggled so much as a creator, I was like, I want to help other people because I would have wanted other creators to help me. So I helped this one guy a lot. Like I gave him thumbnail advice. I hopped on calls. I even helped out in his school program twice, like once for his course and then once for a live lecture. And so basically, like I was helping him a lot. I then like have this video blow up about attention span. And a couple months later, because I support this guy, right, a friend, I see a video very similar pop up. And when I see a video with the same title and thumbnail pop up, I'm curious to watch it because I'm just like, maybe they copied other elements because they obviously saw my video existed. And so when I watched it, I was like, wait, this is insane. I was like, this is so blatant. And, I don't want to give away like too much of the story because I made a whole video about it, but like this was actually not the first time he plagiarized me. And so all the pieces started falling into place because then I saw his other actions previously as also ingenuine. And that was like asking me to be on his call, but then not saying that it was for his paid program at first, things like that. And so then I continued watching the video and I was like, wait, that's an ad with my face in it. And I was like, isn't this from the live call? And I was like, I didn't even know I was being screen recorded for this live call. And I was like, this is a little even way over the line. And so like I confronted him about it privately, which many people in the comments said I didn't, but like, come on. Like I feel like people just don't listen to the video and they just start commenting. But I confronted him privately. He denied everything. And I was like, so first of all, I am good at math. So like statistically, I know this is like improbable, but even like just someone with logic knows it's blatant. And every single creator, which like I have had like tens of creator friends and non-creator friends see the two side by side, they were like, it's blatant, right? And so I was like, I have to protect myself. And I think this is a good chance to stand up for the creator community and to give a message to students, because students have a lot of pressure nowadays, probably to cheat, to copy. There's a lot of discord online about that too. And so I was like, this is a great chance to hit all of those. So I made the video. It was like very scary, of course, but I did it with conviction. I was like, I wouldn't have chosen otherwise to not do this. And so even with like the aftermath of some negative things coming out, it's like most people still support me. And so many creators who I've never talked with in my life, they reached out to me. They DM'd me being like, you're so brave. Thank you for doing this. This was happening way too much. And what you experienced was on a whole nother level. And someone even shared in the comments, actually multiple people shared in the comments, yeah, I thought I was the only one who noticed. Or like, yeah, he's been doing this with other people too. And I was like, this is so crazy. And yeah, that's just like kind of the TLDR. Well, kind of a long TLDR of the story.
Yeah, I think it's insane. It is something which I kind of knew. Like I've had people copy my stuff, and it's the worst is when they copy your title and thumbnail and they do even better. That is like, bro, what?
Just like,
yeah, it's I just hate that it works. Like, you know what I mean? Like I was like, okay, let's say someone copies a movie and like puts out, let's say like, you know, like Oppenheimer with Christopher Nolan, right? If someone literally makes their own version of that with like the same title or the same like poster and same title and like the same beats of the movie, that would never succeed. Why would a copy of someone else's movie do well? But on YouTube, it does, apparently, which is like absolutely ridiculous. And this is not even only in our niches. This is everywhere on YouTube. This is like Brent Rivera, the king of copying on YouTube. I just kind of know, I can throw his name out there. It's just, and entertainment YouTubers do it like blatantly. They will just copy each other. Like big entertainment YouTubers will copy smaller entertainment YouTubers. Same title, thumbnail, design, concept. It's just ridiculous. And like I think something needs to happen, something needs to change, because fundamentally it's like it is disingenuous, it's inauthentic. Just come up with your own idea. Like also him denying the script thing is like absurd. How can someone just think genuinely that you could just come up with the same script? Dude, like what?
A lot of his younger audience believed him, and that's the crazy thing, because people think that a lot of ideas on YouTube are the same anyway, because eventually you might run into the same concepts, right? Like just as an example, you know, I called a meditation a mini vacation. And I made that up myself because I was just like, oh, it does feel like a mini vacation. I heard someone else say that the other day, but like they probably didn't steal it from me because like that person doesn't know who I am. But it's just like something that's universally.
And it could be an inspiration thing too.
Yeah.
Like that could be like, oh, like I really like the way Amy said mini vacation. I really resonated. I'm going to share that idea with my audience too as well. Yeah. I wouldn't see that as like copying compared to like, and it's also nice when people credit as well as like, oh, I got this idea from this area.
Yeah, I always credit also because like I wrote scientific papers. And so I think like not only do I always try to work with integrity, but I just want to know where the thing came from. Cause like for my own use. Cause like when I watch back the video, I'm like, oh yeah, I got that from there. Oh, I should like look into that book or that podcast again, you know? I just want
it's just good for everyone.
I just
right?
want to attribute it. Like I don't understand like what's wrong with attributing it. You're not like giving credit, like abundance mindset, guys, you know? And so I think being someone who tries to live with high integrity, and I'm very like type 1 Enneagram, like believes in justice, things like that. Being in a space like social media really like hurts me sometimes, like in what I see in human nature and how people are not only the creators are a problem, but like the viewers cannot be discerning sometimes to protect the creators, honestly.
Yeah. I think YouTube drama is insane. It's it's hard to know like when someone's audience is against some person and stuff like that. It's just it's a big mess. But I think honestly, it's like I don't think copying is good. I think it's bad for everyone. I think if you're a YouTuber or someone who's listening to this, there is more than enough to go around. I love the idea of the abundance mindset, like you mentioned a couple times. Whenever people make decisions based off of scarcity, that's how they justify basically unethical actions. Is like, I have to do this. I have to do this to blow up. I have to copy her title and thumbnail because I don't have time to think of my own thing and I have to do well. So I think often like the road to hell is paved with good intentions. People are like, oh, like I have to do well. I have to do this. Well, now you just ended up plagiarizing someone else and you lost a good friendship for someone who tried to help you as well.
Yeah, that was ridiculous. And now I'm gonna like be controversial, quote unquote, because I don't think it's controversial, but like I just did not know that there were such bad people in the world and that I could like come in such close contact with them. So like on the bright side, because I try to take everything as a lesson, I'm just like, okay, I need to like, it's my responsibility. Just like the phones, you know, maybe the social media is bad, but it's my responsibility to have good judgment of character and just protect myself. And I think that, you know, it's also a problem of the algorithm to really support people who copy, you know, because so many people have talked about that, but that's also why like Ryan Higa, the legend, left. And so one of his videos where he talked about on someone else's podcast why he left YouTube, I really resonated with a lot of the things he said with the platform, because it used to be like broadcast yourself. That's why it's called YouTube. But it became this huge center of business where people get in just to make money. And when you get in with ingenuine reasons, you're going to make ingenuine decisions too. And so it's just like really ruined the landscape. And even though I'm obviously not a legend like Ryan Higa, I could really resonate with a lot of the reasons why he quit YouTube.
Yeah. I recently watched a video about that. I don't know if you saw the same video where someone was talking about that. I never actually put the pieces together. Like he grew up on YouTube in like 2006, 2007. Like you said, broadcast yourself. The whole idea was like you're authentic. It's like original. It's creative. You just show whatever you think and care about. And now it's more like an entertainment platform competing with Netflix and Disney Plus, right? It's become like it's a corporatized entity, which is like the hamster wheel of pumping out content for views and AdSense and algorithms and stuff like that. So yeah, it's definitely a very different place. I don't know where we go with this. I get why copying works because it's like, oh, if someone came up with a really good idea, title and thumbnail, a thief is going to steal that, and then like it did well for a reason, so probably does well again. But I think YouTube should create systems to prevent that. I think YouTube should I think Instagram actually, and maybe YouTube is doing this as well with shorts, where like copying is massive in short form content too, where people are literally like screen recording other people's videos and like reposting them with like Subway Surfer jumping stuff like that. And I think their algorithms actually don't push that as much anymore, because it's like we want to push original content. The person who originally came up with that should be promoted the most, right? Like let's say there's like a piece of content, let's call it content A, and content A is shown to 70% of people, and the copy content B is shown to 30% of people. Well, the person who came up with content A should get 100% of that, and the viewers benefit too because they're seeing the same content. It should just go to the person who originally posted it. So I confidently believe, I'm sure no one from YouTube is probably watching this. Let's be honest, but I confidently think like as I grow more and more and more, and like hopefully get like a YouTube rep eventually, I would love to like bring this up with them and be like, hey, this is a serious problem and it needs to be solved.
The thing is, it has been brought up to YouTube reps. And
really?
YouTube is aware of this problem. And that's why huge people like Brent Vera still get away with it. Like that just hurts me. Like people like copying and to become millionaires is like, yeah. And so I feel like content being copied is like one thing, but I think titles and thumbnails might be harder just because, you know, someone's content like that, I think would still be the primary driver of like how well the video does. Because like if your content's crap and you have the same title and thumbnail, like still not gonna do well, and like content's the bulk of the work. So I think that should be cracked down on first, just like you said, short form is, because it's the content itself that's being copied, you know? So I think like I do want to say like it's really hard to distinguish copying from inspiration when it's a smaller piece of the picture, which is a thumbnail or title.
For sure.
You know?
Yeah, I think it's all like stacked on top of each other. I think like the actual video itself is absurd if someone copies that. That's like, what the hell? Like, yeah, that's ridiculous. I think that probably should, like you said, be cracked down on first. I still stand by the title and thumbnail combination at least. Because like, again, I've seen some people like copy my exact title, almost exact thumbnail. And like, sure, maybe they have like original ideas and it's good that it's going to more people, but I'm just like, this is annoying. I don't like to see my like packaging because like that the title and thumbnail is what gets the view, right?
Yeah.
So it's like sure the actual likes might not be that much, subscribers might not be that the video's like shitty or something, but also these people, I mean, I don't know about you, but like the people who I've been copied and like the people who I see doing this, it's not like they're making shitty videos, right? Like Brett Rivera's video, I mean, maybe I think they're bad, but like I'm sure there are people who think, oh, his videos are good, yet he still copies. Like I think there was like an example that I saw of, I don't know if you saw this, but there was some like spending 24 hours in like capsule hotels or something. And like there's a thumbnail of like a bunch of capsule hotels and like a guy sitting there.
Oh,
and
I know the thumbnail.
Yeah, and then Brent Rivera, exact same thing. Like a bunch of capsules and like the guy sitting there, and he got like millions of views, and this guy got like 100K views on it, right? So I don't know. It's controversial. It's complicated. I'm sure they're working on it, and I hope they figure something out soon. But yeah, if someone wants to do well on YouTube, I strongly emphasize you can do well without copying, right?
Yeah, I honestly really hate how packaging makes such a big impact.
That's true.
It's so stressful. It's like the one thing that like continually stresses me out because I made this beautiful video and I'm just like, oh, what if it doesn't get clicks? You know, then people will never know what's in there. And titles are just so crazy. You know, like there are the things now like in parentheses, no BS. And it's like, okay, so like, are you saying all the other videos do have BS? What does no BS even mean? Oh, but you know what? I'm going to click that because that seems more convincing than
all it has no BS in it.
Yeah, that seems so much more convincing. I'm just like, ugh.
Yeah. It's I hate it. It's human psychology. It's headlines. It's like newspapers and stuff like that. There's something about the way it's written and like the combination. Like I'm sitting on a video right now that like I should have posted this morning, but like I'm like, oh, what if it doesn't do well because of the title and thumbnail? So I'm like, yeah, it is. I don't think that might not change at all because I feel like YouTube is fine with that. But I wish that the actual content mattered more. Because like if you look at a book, right? The phrase is don't judge a book by its cover. There are lots of books with terrible covers that are great books that people recommend. I don't think anybody's thinking, oh, I'm not going to read that book because the cover is kind of annoying. Like the ideas are what stand for it. So I wish that was the case when it came to YouTube or even like a movie, right? If the movie poster is not that great, no one's going to be like, I'm not going to watch that movie. It's like the movie itself kind of stands for itself. So I wish that was like that on YouTube.
Yeah, it's hard, but I think it's just the way of the game. Because otherwise it'll be like short form where it plays
That's true. That's even worse.
Yeah.
So you know what?
You just can't win.
Yeah, the lesser of two evils. You know what I mean? Awesome. All right. So tell me about your decision to actually quit consulting and go all in on your content. Because for context here, I know you mentioned how you kind of had like a natural break anyway because your fiance had an MBA. Was it MBA or master's? MBA in New York, right? So you were going to move anyway with him. But because at that point you had, how many subscribers did you had? Like 10, 20K?
15K.
15K.
Yeah, something like that.
Got it. So you went full time at 15K subscribers, which I feel like that's like an anomaly.
Yeah.
For me, I went full time at like 45K.
That's much more reasonable.
Yeah. And I also like, I was also like making money through sponsorships and I also like had launched a product and stuff like that by the time I went full time. I mean, it was still like a risky move on my behalf too as well. But I want to hear like what actually gave you that confidence to do that? Because I feel like a lot of people, I mean, let's be real, most people haven't even started yet. But there are a lot of people who are like, okay, when do I actually leave and take the risk to do that? So I just want to hear like, what gave you the confidence to actually like take a pause on consulting and go all in on YouTube?
Yeah, so I don't know if I would say I had confidence to do it, but it was just the conviction of starting YouTube even in the first place. So when I started, I was like, when I started taking it seriously, I should say, I just thought I have ideas and experiences that I think more people can benefit from. That was just like, I think I filmed a little vlog on that day I decided that. And I was like, I'm going to look back and be like, oh, I was right. And so that conviction there was just what I still believed in. And I thought that it wasn't a matter of when, or sorry, I messed it up. It's not a matter of if, but it's a matter of when, right? And so right now is just a natural breaking point. And if not now, then when would it be, right? So I think people wait too much on like, what's the perfect time, you know? But I'm a firm believer in like, just do it now because then you can fail faster and see how to do better next time by iteration. And so I think it was just believing that, hey, if all of these randos in the world, like high schoolers and college students, can become a YouTuber and find success here, then why not me? You know, I did hard things, right? And I think it's just like believing that, you know, whether it's celebrities or whether it's other creators, they're just a human being at the end of the day, right? Well, you can't compare ourselves to Elon Musk, but we are generally pretty similar, you know?
Mhm.
And so I think it's just not putting other people on a pedestal that gave me a chance to be like, yeah, I think I really want to give myself that fighting chance because I would regret it if I didn't. And I do think another driving reason is like I felt that even though I had an editor, I couldn't give my all as far as thought and strategy into it. No matter how many like how to grow on YouTube videos I watched, I did not feel like I could give enough into it. And so there was a period of time when I just like was spitting out tons and tons of ideas onto my notes app, but I couldn't execute all of them. And then I was like very morbidly like, oh no, what if something like happens to me and all my ideas just like sit there and they're just like in my notes app forever. No, I got to execute this. And so that's also a driving force where I'm like, I got to get these out to the world. Like, as long as they exist in the world, I'll be happy, even if it doesn't mean like, oh, I have so many subscribers or like XYZ, you know? And one more thing, I know this is kind of long, but I do want to say that there were so many times when I told Sean, like, I never want to be a full-time creator. I was like, I never want to do that because I see how people will sell out and base their decisions off of not so genuine reasons. And I was like, I always want to be able to choose to not take that sponsorship or do XYZ. So it was actually by accident that I became a full-time YouTuber, but I'm pretty proud of myself for sticking to who I am, despite having the financial burden or privilege, however you see it, to have that as my job.
Yeah. So Chris Williamson often talks about this idea that like you will never see the sponsorship that YouTuber didn't take. Right? It's like for every time that someone criticizes a YouTuber, it's like you don't see the time that they were offered $100,000 to promote some like scammy crypto coin, right? They're like, no, that's against my morals, right? But it's like the one time they made some small error, like the audience tears them down. So yeah, I think it is underrated to really like. I don't think people recognize like how tempting it is to actually do something for the money and to actually. It is very respectable to stick to your principles and like avoid that, especially it's like. You had gone full time, and you mentioned you're doing some kind of like side gigs and stuff, but like you could have very easily justified, hey, like I have to do this sponsorship, I have to pay the bills, I have to earn money. Therefore, I'm going to shill something to my audience that I don't believe in, that I don't care about, just to get the bag, right? And most people don't live in creator land, but that kind of behavior is very common. Like you have like Logan Paul scamming his audience with like Crypto Zoo and stuff like that, right? Over and over and over again. Like he keeps like scam after scam after scam, and people still follow him, which is kind of crazy, right?
Yeah. And so without consequence, it's like, why wouldn't I do it?
Exactly.
But it comes down to integrity. It's just about integrity at the end of the day. Yeah.
Definitely. So actually help me understand. I'm curious about timeline here. So you quit your job. Was it like 3.5 years into YouTube? How long into YouTube did you quit your job?
So I started YouTube in March 2020 and then I quit in 2023. So yeah, 3 years.
3 years. Was it like March 2023 when you quit? Oh, April. So around 3 years in. And you're about like almost 5 years in right now. So you've been full time for like almost 2 years. Right?
Wow.
That's kind of crazy, right?
Yeah.
Maybe like
1.5.
1.5. So at what point did you become like financially stable off of YouTube? Because I know you had like a meteoric rise during that time, but because again, like this is almost like for me personally, like I only became financially stable about 6 months into doing it full time. So I was living off of savings. I was earning like I had a few sponsorships here and there. I had like my product was doing like all right here and there, but only like 6 months in did I actually like earn a living income after doing it full time. So I want to understand like when did you actually know, hey, like I could if I wanted to live off of this as my job?
Yeah, it's hard because I already was living off of it. The little I had,
yeah,
like, and savings too. You know, it's like I was already like living as a full-time creator, and my fiance was in school, so we were paying a lot of tuition. And so, I guess there wasn't like a certain point where I know like we're stable because stability in creator land is not really existent because month by month your revenue varies. But if I were to predict like when my earnings kind of matched what I earn in consulting, that is. Honestly, I just think it was like mid 2024, maybe. If like I could.
So recent.
Yeah. So if I could like annualize that. And like, yeah, I do want to say that like I feel like I'm not the best at like marketing. And I don't know. I just feel like either it's my incompetence or like the social media landscape has changed where I have seen a video talk about how creators are earning a lot less than they did before, including on YouTube AdSense, just like as one source.
Oh, that's
of
definitely
revenue.
true.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Wait, so what percent? You said mostly it's sponsorships, right? Like percentage wise? Because I was surprised when you said like AdSense is considerable. Because for me, AdSense is literally zero, almost zero at this point. It's like I get AdSense, but my views are nowhere near enough where like I can do anything off of AdSense. It's like, I'll be honest, it's like $700 a month is AdSense. Whereas like my own product and my own company, like that is a lot more because it's like extremely optimized towards my audience. Like my audience wants jobs in tech, I will help them get a job in tech. Right? It's like very vertical like that. So
yeah, I think you're very smart. So what I was saying earlier about my incompetence, it's not so much like incompetence. It's more like I think I'm scared to sell. I think no, I know I definitely have a lot more to share beyond just my YouTube videos because I have hundreds of iCloud notes of ideas I have not shared yet, and that I would love to in a longer format that's not like stressful of like making optimized for 15 minutes. And so I think I just have to like learn once I have some more time because I'm wedding planning right now, as you know.
Fair enough.
To like just really focus on the strategy of like making this a system that obviously gives to my audience more and then also gives back to me a little bit. So I think
Definitely.
like I'm just like really afraid, I think that if it's rushed, it comes across like not well, but also I think I'm like over worried about how people might perceive like being sold something. Because I think nowadays, because of so many ads and bad actors and social media, people see being sold to as like a scam. But it's like, no, you're getting something back in value. There's a reason why we put a dollar amount behind it. And so I think like I just have to get over that mental block and like figure out how to get even like the viewers who don't do that extra step of critical thinking, like, oh, this is an investment in yourself,
Definitely. Yeah, I'm gonna opine on this for a little bit because I think it is the idea that I think it is a complicated field because there are so many bad actors. Couple things. No one goes to Target and is like, oh, it's a scam. Why are they not giving this stuff away for free? No one walks into Walmart being like, why are they selling plates or groceries? It's a scam, right? It's like, what? We live in an economy, right? Like you are getting value by eating that apple. Okay, so you pay 10 cents for that apple. A is to B. No one has any clarification or confusion about that. It's with the idea of selling knowledge is like very touchy nowadays. And I like to think about this way. No one's going to the universities and being like, it's a scam. You're paying $3,000 for a college course. That's online for free. Why would you pay that money? They're scamming you. Maybe some people are saying that.
I was going to say, a lot of people do say that.
A lot of people do say that. Valid, fair enough. But I feel like the people who are like criticizing creators for selling like knowledge, that maybe, again, I want to speak for someone else. I have a sense that they're less upset about the universities. Like they're like, oh, this creator is selling like knowledge. It's a scam. But also I'm a college student right now. So I don't know. I think the one issue is that like it's the Wild West right now. Like you don't know whether this person's product or course or coaching or knowledge is actually what it is because there's no regulation. Whereas like Caltech has been around for probably like 100 plus years and has like laws and regulations and is like an actual entity. So it is a bit of the Wild West. People have been scammed. There are bad actors out there. But I think like from first principles, right? The idea that knowledge can be worth a dollar amount. Like I firmly stand behind that. Like I have paid so much for like alternative education and like learning from mentors and people like that. I've like benefited immensely from that. Like it completely changed my life to actually like spend money on knowledge outside of like the school and education system. So I think it's complicated. I think people have like touchy feelings about it, but also at the end of the day, right? You can't like satisfy everyone with anything. Like even with free content, people are going to be pissed off about something or the other, right?
Yeah, that's my problem. I think I still just can't get rid of that people pleaser in me. I think it's always going to be part of me, and like also maybe partly why I can make some good videos that like touch people emotionally. And so I think I have to realize that what I need to do is to focus on the people who do want what I have to say,
Definitely.
and who believe in that value already.
Yeah. And it's like no one is making anyone buy anything, right? Like that's fundamental. Let's say creator launches like $100 self-paced course or something, right? No one is putting you at gunpoint saying you have to buy that. You can watch their free content, but some people want more, right? Some people are like, hey, I have money and I'm willing to spend on that. So I don't know. I think it's a complicated space. I definitely struggle with the people pleasing aspect of things when like I'll make a video and people won't even watch the video. They'll just look at the title and the thumbnail, go to the comments, leave a negative comment and get off. Like I remember, I think I mentioned this to you. I made a video about why I quit my software engineering job. Someone commented, "No wonder you got fired." I'm like, what? I quit. Like I didn't get fired. The title is I quit. The whole video is about how I quit. And they're like, "No wonder you got fired." Right. So, YouTube's an interesting space.
Yeah.
I think selling to your audience is definitely has a bad connotation, but my own personal belief here is that there can be a balance where everybody, or not everybody, but like it can be, you can ethically sell to your audience, depending on what the thing is, if it's valuable.
Yeah, I think something I'm trying to tell myself is that it would be a disservice to not create a product with more of my value and knowledge and wisdom that I don't have in my content.
There are people who would pay for your product and it would change their life, and they don't have the opportunity to do that right now because of this.
Yeah.
So.
Okay, I'm gonna cut this part
thinking
of our podcast and then use it to drive me to make my thing.
Sounds good.
Yeah, I have so many ideas, and so it's just
I mean, the world is waiting. You know what I mean? The world is waiting.
Yeah,
awesome.
Yeah. I relate to the comment part though, because I see on people's pages where they sell a course or just sell anything, and then automatically comments sell out, sell out, sell out, and that affects the whole discourse in the comments, and people will believe it because they're like, "Oh, you're a commenter just like me."
Yeah. It's annoying. I don't like it.
Yeah.
I struggle with that a lot. All right. Final couple questions here. Kind of changing topics, and we have like 9 more minutes to your call, so I want to be mindful of time.
Thank you for
Yeah.
Okay.
This is kind of a topic changer, but you're engaged. So I want to hear more about that. How did you meet your partner? You mentioned at Caltech, but tell me that story. And what advice would you give to young people who are like mid-20s, thinking about getting married, starting a family at a young age? Because I'm only 23 right now, but like it is something I have to think about. Me and my girlfriend have talked about it several times. Like, how are we going to time this? She's a bit older than me as well, so I feel like that impacts things. So I guess tell me about like what advice you have for young people navigating their relationships along with their careers in life.
Mm-hmm. For sure. First of all, that's great you're thinking about it, because what I see online, at least, and in New York City, is that people are not really looking to settle down. So first of all, like that's good that you're like being mindful.
Mm-hmm.
So to answer your first question, I think it was like how I met my fiance.
Yep.
So I said Caltech before, but what I meant was like going to Caltech made me apply to this internship in Southern California, which then is where I met him. So it's the butterfly effect, like one thing affects another. And so you never know. But I met him at my internship during COVID. So summer 2020. It was a biotech internship. He was a full-time employee there. And then, I was an intern. At first, when I met him, I just thought he was old, because everyone to you is old when you're an intern, because you're like, oh, they're probably like 10 years out of school, But he ended up being the youngest one there. And we got along very well because he also studied chemical engineering. He wanted to do an MBA, and then he was trying to convince me to not return to the company. He was like, "Oh, you should go do consulting because I wish I did that." And so at first I was like, "Oh, he doesn't like me. He doesn't want me to come back." But then I was like, you know what? He probably knows what he's talking about. So that's why I went to recruit for consulting later on. But basically, we didn't start dating during that summer because, I don't know, HR.
Yeah, I get it.
It's kind of a funny origin story. But the very last day, he basically took me off site and then like confessed. I won't go into all the details because like pretty long. But then after that day, I actually left directly to fly to Edinburgh, University of Edinburgh in Scotland, for a study abroad. So for the first 3.5 months of our relationship, it was completely virtual and in different time zones as well. Yeah.
Wow, that's crazy.
Yeah. So I think that actually was very helpful because we found we connected so well, like emotionally and like with our views on the world, and just like vibed.
Mm-hmm.
We had like movie nights every week. We like video called, and then directly, like immediately after my study abroad, I flew back to LA and he picked me up there. And then we spent a day there. Then we flew to Colorado, like both of us, to already meet my parents and like stay with them because I was just like so confident. And I should say that like during the study abroad period, like we already told each other we're like, oh yeah, you're the one, and like all that like cheesy stuff. So I find it really insane because it's so early on, right? And I never imagined this because by this time I was already like pretty hopeless about like finding like the perfect person. And basically I was very surprised. And so that's how we knew like very early on. And we did a little bit of long distance, while I was still at Caltech. He was living in San Diego. But eventually, once I had my full-time job and COVID was still happening, I could work remotely. So that's kind of the origin story of like where we got to know each other, started living together, and then eventually became engaged. Yeah. Then, yeah. So your other question, like advice for people managing relationship and career. So very importantly, first of all, is that your partner might not be able to understand what you're doing career-wise, but they have to trust you. And so with YouTube, that's obviously like kind of risky in like anyone's eyes for any kind of career. And so to Sean, he just knows of my abilities and how much I try, my work ethic, my like past record, I guess. So he just trusted me to do whatever it takes. Like he didn't, whatever it takes. It doesn't need him to understand like everything I'm doing, you know? But if I say like, hey, I have to like go, I can't eat dinner right now, he's going to trust me that I have to do it, you know? And I think that's what makes a relationship work that way. When like, oh, maybe you have to stay at work for a long time one day, you know? It's about trust. Then I think secondly, it would be that you are a team. So how a basketball team works, right? Like there's a point guard, there's like different players. They each have their different roles, and they're not going to be upset like, oh, you as the very tall player, you're not dribbling enough, you know? You're not going to say that. Everyone has their different role, and sometimes one person might shoot more, one person might shoot less, right? And so same with a couple. As a team, sometimes one person might cook more. Sometimes one person might have to pick up the slack in some area, but you know that the other person is working hard on some other aspect. And so that's how you work together, even if, again, like you're not doing the exact same thing or like you don't understand the other career of the person.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great advice. I think there's like a narrative out there nowadays that if both people are doing exactly the same thing in every area of their life, it's a huge, massive problem. But sometimes it's okay. Like, I think as long as you guys communicate about it and it's like, hey, this is okay, it's kind of necessary, right? Sometimes someone is going to have like a crazy work project where they have to be at work for 70 hours a week for like a 3-week period. Okay, in that case, like maybe the other partner can step up, or like vice versa, right? Like let's say one partner is having a tough time with their family. Like say it's like someone's sick, someone's like there's a funeral or something. Okay, like in that time or a tragedy happens, the one person has to really step up. So that's great advice. And I started my relationship long distance too. So I think it is really hard, but there are benefits because like you develop that like intellectual, emotional trust and connection before like you guys like, you know, go on like traditional dating, right? In person. So I think there is benefit. But anyway, we are short on time. So Amy, thank you for coming today. I think part 2 will be on your podcast.
Yeah.
So hopefully that is out by the time this is public. So you guys can go to your channel. But do you want to kind of like say where people can find you and learn more about you? Okay,
sure. Well, thank you so much to everyone listening. Thank you, Aman, for having me. It was such a pleasure. So fun. And you can find me at my main channel, YouTube. YouTube name is Amy Wang. So just my name. My Instagram, don't download it if you don't have it. But if you want some productivity or something to remind you to get off your phone, you can follow me at WAMYY. So Wamy with 2 Y's. And my podcast is called Your A+ Life. You can find it on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube.
Awesome. Amy, thanks for coming today.
Thank you so much.
That's today's episode of the Liftoff podcast. Thank you so much for watching. Now, if you want early access to every single one of these podcast episodes, head over to Apple Podcasts or Spotify or your podcast app of choice and follow Liftoff with Aman Manazir. That's right. You can listen to every podcast episode before it gets released on YouTube if you go over to Apple Podcasts or Spotify, or check the link in the description and hit subscribe. And finally, always remember, the night is darkest before the dawn. I'll see you in the next one.